Welcome in. Good afternoon, evening, as we hit you with the extended version of the NBA Deeper Dive, the Yahoo edition. So we thank Yahoo. We're going to focus entirely on this Yahoo 9-game slate for the next 30 minutes. We is myself, Matt LaMarca in the house. First time you and I have had a chance to do a show together. Jordan knows the shenanigans, I'm sure, with both of us all too well. He's producing and will tell you everything that you can take advantage of with Yahoo throughout this show. But first and foremost, my man, Matt, it's great to see you on here. Great to do a show with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. Still getting just fired up every time I hear that pre-show little intro song. It makes me want to run through a brick wall. And today I'm ready to run through that brick wall for Yahoo. We're doing it Yahoo style, and I'm ready to go. I'm excited.
Absolutely. No, we do have some amazing, and I imagine that's all original because, you know, YouTube is very strict on stuff like that. I don't know where they got it, how they got it, but they're always updating it too. Jordan seems to have like that street vibe to his music more so than Tyler, Chris, and I'm not knocking any other producer here, but I don't know what it is, Matt. He seems to unearth a lot of the ride vibes, if you will.
Okay, so Jordan's got the vibe. That's
yes,
good to know.
He does. Yeah. Now he's out west. You and I, East Coast guys. He's a little slower.
Different vibe.
Right. So, you know, don't just know that chances are we'll lap him as fast as we go. But that's fine. He's cool out there. And that's just the West Coast mentality by all means. But yes, we are here to dive into Yahoo. And for those of you who are brand new, don't worry. We're going to walk you through this to the seasoned pros and vets. Just pay attention to what Matt has to say as we build a nice little lineup here for you throughout this slate. 9 games. So first and foremost, why don't you just give us kind of your overview for tonight, looking at it. Yahoo, of course, in the backdrop with how we play here, Matt, but just how you're looking at this slate overall and kind of some areas maybe where you think you found some value.
Yeah, so 9-game slate. Plenty of superstars available if you want to go that route. You've got Giannis, you've got Jokic, you've got Towns. But as has been the case for a lot of the early season, I'm seeing a lot of the value here kind of in some of the lower priced players. So that'll help us tonight. That means we can jam a few of those studs into our lineup, and we can take the savings with some of these guys who are priced near the minimum here on Yahoo.
I love the sound of that because that means that we're not compelled to pay up for every single star possible, that there's going to be a lot of value. It looks like that you're going to find, you've already found, and that goes a long ways, especially when we're looking at a certain amount of, as you mentioned, the 9 games, right? So a certain amount of stars here and trying to budget everything accordingly, knowing that, hey, you want to pay up for Giannis, you want to pay up for Dame, somebody along those lines. It's not going to bite you overall with a thicker group of guys that you could choose from that mid to lower range.
Right.
Great start. All right, let's look at this here. And we'll bounce around position by position, of course, and look at this specifically with Yahoo. As you know, $200. So we're going to spend accordingly here for this lineup. The one center, the utility spot, very similar to what we've done on other places. But here specifically with the point guard spot. And I don't know what position that you look at, Matt, throughout that you know already you're going to pay up for versus mining some value. Couple of high-cost guys for sure. I know the talk of the town is James Harden no longer getting to the free throw line because of his rule, he and Trae Young's rule. Where are you looking at to start with the point guard position tonight on Yahoo?
Yeah, I don't see this as a position that I'm prioritizing. Lillard and Harden not really popping in our projections from a value standpoint. I think we can do a little bit better when we're paying up at the top of the position. Same goes for Trae Young. He's grading out as even a worse value in our projections than Lillard and Harden. Certainly both of those guys have upside. Brooklyn taking on the Wizards. The Wizards were a very juicy matchup for fantasy last year. They played at a breakneck pace and they played no defense. So I'll have some exposure to Harden for sure, but he's not like a priority target for me at $48. And then the same goes for Lillard. I think his spot, like the spot is not as ideal for him against the Clippers, but somebody that we know is upside. We know that he can go off in any particular game. Again, I think we can do a little bit better here than going with those top guys.
when you start to look at the price point that makes sense, right? And maybe this is a position where, as you mentioned, I know you're not looking to spend up. Maybe this is a position where you're totally punting, or you're looking at lower cost guys. But where is that ceiling to where it makes sense for you? Is it I know he had a humongous game. I don't know how sustainable it is. Knocked down 6 threes, Spencer Dinwiddie. I don't know if you look at a guy like that, kind of in that 26, who's still overall, Matt, on the slate, pretty pricey there when you compare it. Reggie Jackson, these guys hovering in that mid to low 20s. Or are you looking at anybody below that maybe you can maneuver with lower costs, but still the same return?
So I do like that $26, $27 tier. I mean, Spencer Dinwiddie, yes, he benefited from, he knocked down some shots in his last game. Obviously, no Bradley Beal in his last game. But if Beal is out once again, I think we can go right back to him. I'm also very interested in D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah,
I got burned by him in his last game. He had 7 turnovers. Was the clear third option behind Towns and Anthony Edwards. But I do think that this is a guy who clearly has upside at this price tag. I mean, in his first game this year, he had 39 fantasy points in just under 25 minutes. I think that he has the potential to beat this price tag. He's got a great matchup versus the Pelicans. So I do think that sort of that middle $20 price range is actually pretty juicy tonight.
Is there anybody below that you anticipate getting some exposure to on Yahoo? And I'll play on that same vein of a bounce back night. And it's mainly not because he was so bad and it can't get any worse, but the volume was there for Devontae Graham. 1 for 10 from 3. I think it was 2 for 14 overall. Is there any, and look, $18, so you're saving a little bit, 8 to 2, depending on the guys you mentioned. But is there any maneuverability there to a guy, and it may not be Graham, but somebody similar to that, where you can look at as a cheaper option and say, all right, it can't be as bad as it was for Graham last time out, and the volume at least is there for shots?
Yeah, our projections right now have Graham and Anthony as sort of the best values at the position if we're ignoring, the $10 punt play types.
Right.
So I think both guys make sense. Cole Anthony, I was very bullish on Jalen Suggs yesterday, and I think I had the spot right. I just had the player wrong.
Right.
So now we've got Cole Anthony maybe looking like the foundational point guard there for the Magic. I think he's underpriced given the role that he's carried early in the year. Pretty significant usage rate. Am I expecting over 60 fantasy points from him again? No, but I do think that he's very fairly priced considering what he has shown so far this season. And the same goes for Graham, right? He was kind of the forgotten man with the with the Hornets last season, which makes sense. They drafted LaMelo Ball. They already had Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward, Miles Bridges, young players like that. So he gets a change of scenery, and he's gone back to becoming a pretty reliable fantasy target, even though he's coming off his worst game, the most minutes that he's played this season in his last contest. So yeah, I think that both of those guys are firmly in play. And then we do have some of those $10 plays if you want to go.
Yeah, let's
just
do it.
Pure bargain barrel.
Who are you punting?
George Hill. We got to start with George Hill, right? You're looking at probably no Drew Holiday tonight. He's doubtful. You're also not getting Brooke Lopez for the 3rd straight game. George Hill, he had over 20 fantasy points in his last game in 25 minutes. We have him projected for right around 20 fantasy points tonight. That makes him a pretty solid value. I think you can look at Anthony Simons at $10. He's kind of been pretty good to start the year. He had a 27% usage rate in his last game, over 24 minutes. Frank Jackson and Patrick Beverley also popping in our models. Those aren't guys that I'm super excited about their prospects, but if you're just looking for some different options to round out your lineup, I think those guys make some sense too.
One more name I wanted to get your thoughts on. It looks like, just playing off of injury and knowing Rozier's out again tonight, any thoughts or exposure? Maybe he's pricey, I get it, but LaMelo's at 38 at the 1. Any interest there?
I think he's a little too expensive for me at 38. You know, if you compare him to, you can get Lillard at 43, you can get Harden at 48. Like I would rather pay the extra 10 and get up to James Harden, who again, it hasn't been a great start to the year for him, but we know who this guy is. And did the NBA crack down on the free throws? Maybe. I'm not willing to say that that's a definite after 3 games of the season.
Fair enough, my friend. That's why I asked, just to get it out there. By all means, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and are subscribed here. It's the extended Yahoo version of the Deeper Dive. We still have the full Deeper Dive live before lock coming up right here. So no need to go anywhere. We have you fully prepared for the NBA slate tonight. And also click those links below. We have a couple of things happening here. You can still jump in with your first week half off of Awesemo Plus Platinum with the promo code Curry. Just click that link below the video and then $10 free for all Yahoo contests. And you're going to get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum free upon your first deposit and contest entry. You can click all of these links, sign up, and don't even leave. You're still going to hear Matt give all this advice about what's happening tonight. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to go anywhere. All right, let's look at the twos here. And I'll just ask you straight up, are we now spending up at this position? Is this the first position now that you're looking to spend up?
Not really.
Yet? Okay.
Not really. I will say that Fred Van Vliet intrigues me. He has been just shooting the ball at will to start the year, 9 3-point attempts in 2 of his first 3 games. He just hasn't made anything yet. I think that eventually the big performance is coming for him. The problem is that he's not the best value on Yahoo at 37. You know, when you talk about LaMelo being 38, it's hard to justify paying 37 for Van Vliet. So I do like him. I'm expecting a bounce back, but this might not be the place to utilize Fred Van Vliet. I think our best bet here, as it has been for a lot of the early season, just take Chris Duarte at $16. You know, we have him graded out as one of the best values at the position. And he's just been super productive to start the year. His fantasy scoring is a bit inflated by the fact that they have gone to overtime in their past 2 games, the Pacers, that is. But he also hasn't shot the ball very well in his last 2 games. He's 6 for 21 in his last game, 6 for 16 the game before. So even if the minutes come down, he should hopefully make a few additional shots in a pace up spot against the Bucks. They were first in pace last season. They're top 5 again this year. I think we just eat the chalk here with Duarte and call it a day.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I wonder if, and I'm looking at guys no higher, and I'm going to arbitrarily use this number 3 here because it fits my example. But I'm looking at, like 3, maybe $2-3 north, $2-3. Well, it would be down to the punt option there below him. So maybe not even below Duarte, but just as far as a pivot for ownership, if people continue to jump on him, his ownership increases. Can you go to anybody? Is Tyler Hero, for example, a formidable pivot now in the event of ownership?
So I love Tyler Hero. I think that we're looking at a big Tyler Hero year. And I also really like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is 23. So he's slightly more expensive in the same ballpark. The problem is that while we're talking pivots, like, yes, they will carry less ownership than Duarte, but we're still talking guys who will probably carry top 3 ownership at the position. Good point. It's not like we're going to be gaining a ton of leverage by switching from Duarte to Alexander Walker or Hero, who our projections have as, like a clear notch or 2 below him from a value perspective.
I'm going to guess that the spend up of Anthony Edwards just may not be worth it when you've got, as you mentioned, Van Vliet on here and even a shot at CJ, but there's been consistency at the very least from Edwards. And I wonder if, knowing he's in that top tier, if it's worth a shot, especially because it's a safer play just based off of variance so far in performance.
Yeah, the Timberwolves have looked impressive to start the year. Now, granted, they beat the Rockets and the Pelicans, so let's cancel the championship parade for them at this point. But I do think that there's some value with this team, right? They have some good fantasy players in Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, and For me, D'Angelo Russell is still in that category, although we may have to reconsider a bit, depending on how things go. So it was a lost year for them last year. They were without Towns for a large portion of the year. And then when he came back, he was limited. I think this team could be a nice source of fantasy value this season. I don't know if Edwards at 33 makes a ton of sense for me. Again, I think that, there are going to be some other stars at other positions that I'm going to want to lean on here, but certainly it wouldn't shock me if the Timberwolves become like a team that we're targeting a lot this year.
Before we move to the three and the forward spot, just looking at the guard slot here in relation to how we've built so far, D'Angelo Russell was your top point, right? To go back to that, or one of them?
He's more of a tournament type play.
Okay.
I think if we're going to just,
if we're looking at cash, maybe it was somebody else, right? But
if we're looking at cash, I may be interested in just eating the chalk with with George Hill and just locking in the safety for him, at 10, and then we can spend up elsewhere. But maybe Cole Anthony, if I'm paying up, would be my top point guard cash play.
Okay, no, that's fine, because that then helps as far as, what you would do at that guard slot, because if we have Anthony, let's just look at Anthony and Duarte, right? $19, $16. There's some money. Now, granted, we've got Giannis, we've got some big names and some big money on the board, and I see you shaking your head knowing that that's coming. Absolutely, Matt. But I'm curious here, do you look at if and this is more of a strategy than anything, but if you've spent down or if you've taken cheaper options at the point and the 2, do you then look to justify? It doesn't have to be James Harden or Trey at the top, but are you looking to spend up a little more? Is this where you look at a Van Vliet at that guard spot, knowing that you've saved some money on the point and the 2?
Yeah, I don't think where I'm spending my money really dictates where I will then like if I pay down at 2 guard spots, do I feel the incline that I have to pay up at the guard utility? Not really. I just want to, spend all the money by the time we get to the end of the lineup. So if I'm going with all expensive forwards or, multiple expensive centers, I'm okay with that option. I think we can get away with some cheaper guards tonight, like Tyler Hero, if you want to plug him in next to Duarte. I like that option. Same goes for Alexander Walker, at 23. I think those are some solid plays to pair with Duarte if you want to use 2 shooting guards. Yeah.
$52 for KD. You spending up for it. Paul George has been absolutely on fire with no Kawhi Leonard. So you mentioned Bradley Beal at this spot here as a GTD. So we're still waiting on that. Anybody else? I mean, where are you looking at? There's some pretty high cost guys here, Matt. So I don't know if you start the spending at the 3 spot yet.
Yeah, I think Paul George is definitely somebody that is going to be in play for me against Portland, who was the second worst team in the league last year in terms of defensive efficiency. So Paul George has been lights out to start the year. I kind of downplayed how involved he was going to be. I didn't know how hard the Clippers would be pushing him during the regular season. It's kind of been their MO to play for the playoffs, but you know what? They don't have that luxury this year, and they're playing that way. So George has been fantastic. He had a 37.2% usage rate in his last game. He's had double doubles in both games with rebounds. Like I think Paul George probably deserves to be closer to Kevin Durant in salary than he does to Bradley Beal. That's my take.
Yeah, and looking at it's interesting too, because your point about Paul George and his salary being closer, should be at least closer to Kevin Durant, it makes it easier, I would think, to roster Paul George over anybody else that's in that range below him. Now, I'm taking Beal and Brown out because of the injury concern hanging over them, but a $4 difference between he and Butler, to your point, it seems like that should be more of a $7 or $8 difference, to where it's not about spending a little less, as we talked about with other positions for guys hovering in that range. It's the opposite here, right? Where you feel good about spending an extra $4 or $5 for George because he's improperly or mispriced.
Yes, agreed. I will say that Jimmy Butler too would be on my radar at 41. especially if we get no Kyle Lowry for the second straight game. So that'll be an injury situation worth monitoring. These guys will keep you up to date on that, with the later shows in the day. But Butler had his usage rate jumped up to over 30% in his last game, and he played 40 minutes in his last game. Like, if there's no Lowry again, I feel pretty good that we can go to Jimmy Butler. Pairing him with Paul George too would not be an issue for me.
I hit that thumbs up button as we see more and more people piling in. The deeper dive live before lock, full editions coming your way. The Yahoo edition here for the next 10 minutes or so. Myself and Matt hit that link below, a couple of links below from what we have going on with the half off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum to right down with Yahoo getting 1 month, of Awesemo Plus Platinum absolutely free. All right, so as we move on here and look at the three, winding down, is there anybody like mid or low range that you really like that you anticipate getting exposure to?
Yeah, as far as the cheap guys, for sure, we have the Bucks value tonight with the injuries that they have. Jordan Nwora is $11. He's standing out as the best value in our projections. And then Pat Connaughton at $12, he's grading out very favorably too. So I think for sure you can target both of those guys. The question is, in the mid-range, do we have any value? And I do see Gordon Hayward potentially with no Rozier for the Hornets, and Michael Porter Jr. I've been expecting a little bit more out of Michael Porter Jr. to start the year, if we're being perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But I still think, he's a guy that should take a step forward, right? He was lights out with no Jamal Murray last year, over 50% from the field, over 45% from 3-point range. So I'm expecting big things from him this year. We haven't gotten it in the first 2 games, but I'm not ready to abandon ship, especially against the Cavaliers.
Just another option at the bottom there as maybe a pivot. Cam Reddish, $11. Any interest on the Hawks? He's not slowing down so far. We know that he's going to get the minutes.
Yeah, Cam Reddish is fine. I would even say DeAndre Hunter is $12. I might prefer him a little bit better if we're going to do a pivot for the Hawks.
Got it. Giannis at the top. I mean, is there a scenario where you're not getting to Giannis? Maybe we should look at it that way, right, Matt?
Very few. There are very few scenarios where I'm not playing Giannis. He's the best player in fantasy. He's pretty fairly priced at $55 on Yahoo. I just think you jam this guy in wherever possible. He's up. He averaged 1.75 fantasy points per minute last year with Drew Holiday and Brook Lopez off the court. He's already averaging more fantasy points per minute this year than he did last year. The only thing that has kept his value down here through the first few games is that he hasn't played a ton of minutes, right? He played less than 23 minutes in a blowout loss versus the Heat. His other games, he hasn't seen a full workload yet either. So one of these games, he's going to play 33, 34 minutes. And when he does, we know what he's capable of, 70-plus fantasy point ceiling easily.
You said very little opportunity to where you're not rostering Giannis. And I understand that that's just the norm here. Where else are you looking? And Tatum may not have Brown again tonight, and that could open something up. Yes, it's a high cost, but we're talking about moving away from Giannis, the highest cost player anyway. So it's not like price should impact here. Where else would you be looking? And maybe it's not as high of an option. Maybe there is some value that we've missed with Marcus Morris or Aaron Gordon, but I imagine that Tatum would be a pretty strong option if you are going to move away from Giannis at the 4.
Yeah, I like Tatum as a pivot for sure. I mean, I think, he's not going to surprise anybody. He's not going to sneak up on everybody. We know that, you can play Jason Tatum without Jaylen Brown, but I do think him being only $10 cheaper than Giannis means that he might not draw the same type of ownership that he normally would in that situation. So I think you can pivot to Tatum. And then definitely if you want to go cheap, you can go with a guy like Precious Achiuwa, who is coming off a big game for the Raptors. He played over 33 minutes. You can also go with Franz Wagner if you want to just stick with guys who have been, solid values for us since opening night, we can go back to the Wagner well here as well.
Fair enough. I like it, man. All right. And as we wind down here, we'll look at a couple of bigs on the way out. Jokic right there at the top. Still not as much, of course, as Giannis, but we've got Jokic, Cat. We've got some pretty good options right there at the top. Let's start there and try to find some value maybe in the middle following.
Yeah, I think Towns would be my preferred choice if I'm paying up at the position today. He's so talented, and he's starting to, show some of the signs of dominance that we saw from him. Again, similar to Giannis, he hasn't seen the full minute workload to start the year, but everything else on him looks really good. I also think Valanciunas is just a tremendous value at $32. Same thing goes for Robert Williams at 25. So center is definitely a position where I'm paying up for somebody, and I will likely use two centers in my lineup, utilizing that utility spot.
And that second one would be the cheaper option you referenced, or are you going to go heavy, you think, on, could you see a scenario where, and it's going to be tough, where you could have Giannis? I don't even know how the math would work offhand, but Giannis, Cat, if you rostered both of them, or Jokic and Cat, rostering both of them and still having Giannis in your lineup. Look, that's superstars and scrubs at that point, but you've given out a bunch of really good low-cost options as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I would lean that heavily into it, but if you wanted to go with Towns, Giannis, and then a Jonas Valanciunas, I think you can do that. Or if you wanted to go Towns, Giannis, and Robert Williams, Bam Adebayo, somebody like that, I think all of those are viable. And there are some value options too, if you want to consider, going with a punt play at center. Montrezl Harrell for 14, Bobby Portis for the shorthanded Bucks, Nick Claxton for the Nets. All those guys standing out in our projections as value options. I kind of like the value at the other positions, paying up for the big men, but if you want to go with a contrarian build and use some of these cheaper centers, I think that's fair. I wouldn't argue too hard against it.
So I'm curious, on the way out here, Matt, as we wind down in the center spot, we can look at specifically, you mentioned Bam, so I don't think it's him, but maybe it's a Nurkic, Turner. I don't know if Capella falls in here. Vooch, it's kind of tough because I know he's sick, but maybe he does fall into this. Are there guys that you're doing everything you can to stay away from? And maybe it's just simply low, like super low exposure to the point where you're just absolutely fading.
I think Miles Turner for me is a fade most nights. I know he was popular against the Wizards and he went off against the Wizards, right? He had 63 fantasy points, but I don't see him being a $28 player. More often than not, he's going to fail to pay off that price tag. So I'm kind of staying clear of him. And Vucevic, you can make an argument that if he's active, he might be underowned, but certainly him being questionable does raise some red flags, about his workload tonight.
All right, my friend, we got in, we got out. You crushed it. A ton of information from high-cost guys all the way down to the bottom. Make sure you're following Matt. Thank him as you win some money tonight on the Yahoo Slate at Matt LaMarca, at Shander Show for me. Thanks to Jordan for producing. Again, Yahoo is giving you $10 free to play with right away. The link is below this video. We also have the 1 month of Awesemo Plus Platinum free. Knicks, I am Matt. You're from Long Island, so got to be Knicks. They don't let you root for the Nets up there. They're too new to the city. Knicks or Sixers? Who you got coming up? I'm in Philly, man. It's going to be a good one.
Knicks are overrated at the moment, unfortunately.
Wow, I didn't expect that. I thought you were going to make fun of Ben Simmons. I teed you up.
Although the side talk video, if they win, that'll be great. I'm excited. Those guys are hilarious.
You're right. That's must-watch television no matter what. It's a pleasure, Matt. Can't wait to do it again, brother. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's Matt. I'm Eytan, Jordan, everything here. Deeper dive. Don't go anywhere. Stay right here.
This looks like he's dead. How many shows you produced today? Ah, not too bad. You got more? What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com Deeper Dive NBA edition, presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Dave Loughran at Laffy_D on the Twitters. Hit your boy up. And, with me once again, because NBA season's back, it's Adam Scherer at Ship My Money DFS. Feeling a little better today, huh? Heard you a bit under the weather.
Yeah, feeling better today. Hopefully can get through this show without, coughing and sneezing and sniffling the whole time and probably making everyone watching it feel sick. But that's how it was yesterday morning for sure. Feel better. Got a nice, slept in this morning. Didn't bother doing the show feeling good now.
Dude, so Larry, what's up, man? Miss you too, brother. When I had the 9 a.m. show today for the showdown strategy for football, check that out Mondays and Thursdays. I hear that you're just MIA. And then once again, I was like, I don't think he's dead this time because I don't think it was at the bar and I heard you were sick, right? So it made sense. Like, all right, so we can cross that off the list. He's clearly sleeping. So as I hear this, I didn't even get out of Zoom. I just stayed in Zoom and I was like, you know what? I'll bite the bullet here. There's no doubt. But I'm sure you got a lot of COVID comments in chat the other day, because nowadays, if you're sick with literally anything, it's just immediately assumed that you have COVID.
Yeah. And to be fair, somebody in chat said something about sleeping through an alarm. To be clear, I'm just an absolute idiot that didn't know I had a show at 10. So there was no alarm set for the show.
Right. So the cold just clouded your judgment and memory and forced you to forget that you had a show.
Yeah, pretty much. And I actually checked the schedule like 5 times too, because I was trying to schedule a doctor's appointment for today around the NFL show. I just somehow never saw that I also had the basketball show.
Steven says, Lafayette at it again, busting. How am I busting balls? I'm the guy filling in for shows in this guy. Come on. Anyway, we got 9 games to talk about, Adam, about 53 minutes to do so. Then we'll turn it over. You got your boy, Josh Engleman, on Live Before Lock with Greg Ehrenberg. Solid pairing, taking you up till 7. But hit that thumbs up, baby. If you haven't done so yet, please do. Man, we can't give Josh all of the likes. At this point, it's really just become a me versus him type of thing. He's my buddy, but I don't like to lose. Neither does he. So what do we got? Almost 1,000 people watching out of the gate. Let's at least get that to 200. And you know what? Subscribe to the channel. Help us get to 70K. Like I said, content will always be free here on YouTube, no matter what. Whether you like it, dislike it, subscribe, don't subscribe. None of that matters. It helps us a ton with the YouTube algorithm, but it's always going to be free, regardless of what you decide to do. But we would appreciate it. All right, let's dive straight into this because we got a lot to break down. We got the Boston Celtics on the road, second of a back-to-back, coming off a easy road win against Houston last night. They're 1-point favorites against Charlotte, team that just has, Miles Bridges crushing of late, Adam. But the situation here is Jaylen Brown's questionable, Al Horford's questionable on the second of a back-to-back. Romeo Langford, for whatever that's worth, is doubtful. What are you doing right now with this injury news, given that we don't know what's going on with them yet?
So for right now, I'm just assuming that Brown and Horford both play because this is a 7 p.m. game, so we should have that news, plenty in advance. My best guess would be that Jaylen Brown plays and Al Horford doesn't, because it is a back-to-back. Horford played yesterday, Brown didn't. But for the purposes of right now, I'm just assuming that they both play because with it being a 7:00 game, I think we get the news in plenty of time.
Jeffrey, popcorn machine is a good place to get those rotations. It's archaic, but it gets the job done. And don't fix what ain't broken, All right, well then let's kick it off with this one, Adam. Where are we starting with Boston? Is this a team that you're getting a lot of today? The game has currently a 224 total going into Charlotte.
Yeah, so it's a team that I think I'll get a lot of. It's just a matter of which players, and that's dependent on Jaylen Brown and Al Horford's status. If you assume Brown and Horford are in, it kind of mutes the production from most of this team because it does lower Tatum's production a bit. Horford potentially has a negative impact on Robert Williams. But Horford himself would look fine if he plays. He played about 30 minutes yesterday. He's looked good so far. Jaylen Brown, if he plays at 7,900, looks reasonable. And Jason Tatum would still look reasonable at 8,700 as well. though he wouldn't be as strong an option as if Brown sits. Robert Williams is, I think, the most interesting piece here in terms of to talk about and possibly to roster. The price tag on him is still pretty appealing at 6,100. He was an excellent fantasy point per minute player last year, averaged 1.26 DraftKings points per minute with Jason Tatum on the floor. This year so far, he's only averaged about 0.84 DraftKings points per minute. He only has about a 9% usage rate. You compare that to 16% with Tatum on the floor last year. He has a 10.5% rebounding percentage compared to 20% with Tatum on the floor last year. So on the one hand, it's a small sample size. Those numbers probably go up as you get more minutes. On the other hand, so far in rebound chances per game, he's behind Jason Tatum, he's behind Horford, and he's behind Jaylen Brown. So it's not like he's getting a bunch of chances and just not delivering so far. He's just not doing much of anything when he's on the floor. The playing time has been encouraging, though. Played about 35 minutes in regulation in the first game. He's played about 27 and 28 minutes in the 2 games since. So at the very least, he's a reasonably priced player that has a massive ceiling because this is someone that gives you defensive upside. He can get blocks and steals at a very high rate, and he probably does start to rebound at least a better rate than he has so far this year, even if for whatever reason he doesn't get back to next year. So, or to last year rather. So I think Williams is a good play, but it is a spot where you want to pay attention to ownership because based on what he's done and the opportunities he's had so far this year, if he's really popular here, I do think he's someone you can get away from in tournaments. It's still risky because he can give you that 40 plus fantasy point game, but I am a little concerned about his rate so far.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, Al Horford has a 24% usage rate, which you're not too worried about usage rate when it comes to Robert Williams, but Horford's averaging, and granted, we only have a small sample here, 15 potential rebounds per game. He's got a 12% block rate, 7 blocks in 2 games. I mean, the guy's been revitalized, it appears, since coming back to a team that knows how to properly use him or actually uses him at all, unlike Oklahoma City Thunder. I feel like Horford's impact is probably pretty significant right now, no?
Yeah, I think so, but also they're staggering minutes between Horford and Williams. So I don't think you can completely blame Horford for the lack of production that we've gotten from Williams so far, since, about half of his minutes are coming with Williams off of the floor. So I think it's Horford probably is cutting into Williams' production. I think that's to be expected. But I also just still think that Williams' rates most likely settle somewhere between what he did last year and what he has done so far this year.
Where are you at on the other side of this one with Charlotte? You have some players now on the Charlotte team that are actually somewhat interesting, but the prices are starting to come up. Like Bridges is definitely not cheap anymore. LaMelo Ball, you can speak maybe. I'm sure this would help everybody out here. The minutes we've seen from LaMelo, he hasn't crossed or even hit 30 minutes yet. My assumption is he settles into like a low 30 minutes per game range early in the season, but he's been 29, 29, 26. And then Gordon Hayward, Mason Plumlee. I feel like they have guys that are going to provide us with utility throughout the season, but definitely not every night. Yeah. Is that fair to say?
What'd you say?
I said, is that fair assessment?
Yeah, I think so. I kind of view Charlotte similarly to the way that I view Boston on the other side, if Brown and Horford are in, where you have several guys that are going to be useful plays if you're playing, 150 lineups or even 20 lineups, but you don't have one guy necessarily that's jumping out as a huge priority. LaMelo Ball gives you a massive ceiling. You have Terry Rozier out, which should mean more field goal attempts for him as well. He's taken 23 and 18 shots in the 2 games without Rozier, 12 in the game with him. But like you were saying, the playing time hasn't really been there for LaMelo. And I am somewhat concerned about that because he does have a competent backup in Ish Smith, and they're not playing many minutes of the two of them alongside each other. So it's just a situation where you kind of look at it and it's just like, it's hard to imagine Smith playing less than like 16 minutes per game, given his ability. And since they're not playing a whole lot alongside each other, that kind of puts LaMelo at 30 to 32 minutes until that changes. So assuming he plays 30 to 32 minutes, he's a high upside play, but there's going to be options that look a little bit better. Gordon Hayward is playing a lot of minutes. He's, I think, appropriately priced. He's a good play, but not a great one. Kelly Oubre at 5,700, I have interest in. He played 34 minutes in the first game of the season. He started in place of Rozier. Then Rozier played. Then last game, Oubre only played 22 minutes, but that was a weird game where you had the second unit get hot. You had the second unit basically close that game out. Kelly Oubre played in the fourth quarter, but he had some foul trouble in the first half is what it was. He picked up his 3rd foul with a minute and 58 seconds to go in the first quarter. So he didn't play at all in the second quarter. So it's hard to gauge his playing time off that game. I think you probably get around 32 minutes from Oubre tonight at 5,700. That's a reasonable price tag. Plumlee's reasonable if he's going to play 28 to 30 minutes, but there's just no one guy that stands out where I'm just like, yeah, I'm building my night around this guy.
PJ Washington just confirmed out as well, Adam.
That's really interesting because he had actually, like, he's been backing up Plumlee and then also getting minutes, at least recently, at the 4. So him being out makes me think you actually get more minutes from Mason Plumlee here. I think it makes Mason Plumlee, again, not look like a priority at 6,500, but if you can go from projecting like 28 minutes to 32 minutes for Plumlee, he's going to start to look a lot better.
Would that become, I don't want to use the term flippantly or the term priority flippantly here, right? But like, would Plumlee become a much better play?
I think he becomes a better play because I just feel more comfortable giving him, 30 to 32 minutes than I would if Washington is in. I still think given the depth of the center position and how many good high upside options there are, I wouldn't say priority, but I would say a play that I like quite a bit in tournaments, assuming his ownership remains relatively low.
Since we have 9 games and we have only an hour show, I think the best way to do this would be at the end of each game, Adam, I'll just ask you to give me your top plays on each side real quick for anybody that wasn't able to catch everything. And if you don't have anyone, or if you don't have any priority options, we don't have to do anything there. Top plays from this game before we move on.
So it's kind of in the sense of the slate. The way things look right now, I don't think there's like any top plays where I would just expect them to be my highest owned guys, but I also like every starter on Charlotte to some extent and pretty much every starter on Boston to some extent. One other thing to point out with the Hornets with Washington out, I do think you could see enough minutes from Jalen McDaniels now at 3,400 for him to be a decent value. He wasn't really in the rotation last game. He played 12 minutes in the first half because of Oubre's foul trouble. Didn't play at all in the second half, but PJ Washington played 26 minutes there. So there should be some minutes available for McDaniels.
Okay. Milwaukee, Indiana. Milwaukee Bucks here on the road, only favored by 2, Adam, against this Pacers team that has driven me nuts already this season. Just can't handle the Washington Wizards without Bradley Beal. They were outscored like 12-2 in overtime. And then against Miami on a back-to-back traveling home, they end up beating them in overtime. And I was on the other side of that each time. So maybe things will change today, but yeah, only 2-point dogs, 230.5 total. Kick it off with the Bucks. You've got no Brook Lopez. Drew Holiday's unlikely to play. And then Bobby Portis is questionable. So again, a lot of moving parts with this Bucks team as well.
Yeah. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. I think this is a spot. This game kind of scares me from just like, you could just have an absolutely dead Indiana team show up. This is a 3-4, and they went to overtime in each of their first 2 games.
Well, and Carlisle's playing them absurd minutes, even in regulation.
Yeah, exactly. I mentioned it in the deep dive. You kind of have to like Malcolm Brogdon and you have to like Sabonis. You have to like a lot of these Pacers players because of the playing time that they're getting, but it just wouldn't really be surprising if they show up just completely dead here. But as a general rule for me, if a game has a 2-point spread, I'm not projecting it to blow out. You just kind of get into some really dicey situations if you're doing that, I think, over the course of the season.
I'm going to lay the 2 points in Milwaukee. I got to get it right eventually. I mean,
yeah, I was going to say that's how I would approach this. I think if I was looking to take advantage of the fact that the Pacers could just be dead here. But from a DFS standpoint, I think you have some pretty good pricing on both sides. With Indiana, you have Malcolm Brogdon at 7,900 playing huge minutes. He's played 36, 40, and I think 38 minutes in regulation so far. That's, he's about a 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy. So that looks pretty good. Sabonis playing huge minutes as well. His price tag's gotten up there, but he still offers plenty of upside in tournaments. Chris Duarte is finally priced where he should be. 3,300 to 6,900 to 3,900 on DraftKings. None of those were really the answer. I think 5,400 is a pretty good price tag. He's playing huge minutes. You're probably getting 34 to 36 minutes from him. His rates haven't been great. 21% usage rate, sub 10% assist percentage. He's averaged about 0.8 DraftKings points per minute. He's certainly capable of going out and I think he's going to just go out and like give you dud performances once in a while because he doesn't dominate any one stat category, but he also is playing huge minutes and he has enough of a role where more often than not, he's going to give you a pretty solid performance at 5,400. Miles Turner in tournaments, I think makes sense at 5,500. He's averaged about 27 minutes per game, but You had one game where he played about 35 minutes and then 2 games where he played a lot less. He's also been hampered by foul trouble, though. If he's playing well and you get 28 to 30 minutes from him, he can certainly give you a good performance. And then Jeremy Lamb at 3,500, 24, 24, and 18 minutes in his 3 games. His playing time isn't safe because you have seen O'Shea Brissett added to the rotation. You can certainly see in any given game Lamb lose minutes to Brissett, Craig, or Justin Holiday. But if he's playing well, Lamb can take minutes from any of those guys. And if you get 24 to 25 minutes from Jeremy Lamb, he's likely to outperform a $3,500 price.
Listen, Bobby Portis hasn't played yet this season, and Brook Lopez is already ruled out. Originally, Portis wasn't on the injury report, and then he was listed as questionable. If he plays today with Brook Lopez already sidelined, what are you projecting for him in terms of minutes? Because we know that Bobby Portis in good situations, when he gets the minutes, can be phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I have him in for 20 minutes right now. If he were to start, I would bump that. My assumption is that, in his first game of the season, he comes off the bench and doesn't play a ton of minutes. I still think he's a reasonable tournament option just because of that volatility. Nobody knows how many minutes he's going to play. He could come off the bench and still play 25 minutes, in which case he probably wins you a tournament at 4,300. So assuming the ownership's not going to be very high and we don't get any sort of Budenholzer telling us how many minutes he's going to play, I am still interested in going there. It's just really risky. If he starts, I would assume 24, 25 minutes kind of becomes the baseline for me.
For sure. Has he did he play at all in the preseason?
I can find out real quick.
I only asked that because I'd be curious to see how extended this absence was, right? Like if he played and got banged up late in the preseason and has been out for a couple of weeks with a hamstring, obviously you'd rather it be like a wrist or something, not a lower body. But
yeah, no, he didn't play in the preseason
at all. Okay, so I mean, at this rate, coming off a hamstring injury, 18 minutes is what I'd feel most comfortable with, probably.
Yeah, that's the same ballpark I'm in.
All right. Anything else for either side?
Yeah, I mean, Giannis and Middleton. Giannis clearly one of the
Sorry,
top
did you
options.
start with the Pacers? Is that why? Did you start on Indy?
Yeah, I started on Indy.
Okay, my fault. Yeah, I was going to say, you went through Milwaukee real fast. Go ahead.
Yeah. Giannis, I think, he's been disappointing in the last couple of games, but you don't want to read too much into that. He dealt with some foul trouble last game, dealt with a massive blowout against Miami 2 games ago. If this game's competitive, you're looking at 34, 35 minutes from Giannis. He's averaged over 1.7 fantasy points per minute without Holiday since last year. His usage rate goes up, his assist percentage goes up. So he looks great. Chris Middleton seems to always disappoint in this spot. You and I always end up DMing about how bad he somehow is. But
he has caused us so much pain over the past calendar year.
Yeah, but at the same time, the salary isn't going up. He's 7,200. He's averaged 1.17 DraftKings points per minute without Holiday on the floor. Milwaukee is mostly staggering his minutes along with Giannis. So you're getting those very, very productive, or what should be very productive minutes where Middleton's playing without Giannis on the floor. At 7,200, if you assume he plays 34 or 35 minutes and produces at an average rate, he's giving you a pretty good score. Outside of those two, I wouldn't say there's anything I'm prioritizing. George Hill is certainly in the mix of cheap value guys you can use. But going back to his previous stint with Milwaukee, he's played about 450 minutes alongside Middleton and Giannis without any of the other point guards on the floor, whether that's Drew, Brogdon, or Bledsoe. He's only averaged about 0.6 DraftKings points per minute, 10% usage rate, 10% assist percentage. So not someone you're expecting to go out and put up massive numbers, but also if this game's competitive, likely to play 26 to 28 minutes at 3,500. You can mix in some Wara and Allen as well, but Giannis and Middleton, the clear priorities for me.
And with Middleton, listen, the shot volume's there. The peripherals haven't been there, but he's the type of guy, particularly with Drew Holiday out today, doubtful, that as frustrated as we are with this guy almost all the time, those big games will happen. And when they do happen, he blows up. So I'm with you. You're not paying an upgraded price point on him. Granted, it's Holiday and not Giannis, which is still a big difference. But Holiday being out, given that you really only have that big 3 on this team, sure, you have some quality role players, but it's significant enough to add a low 7K price point to, soak up kind of, or put our hatred to the side for a night. Is what you're saying.
That's kind of the thing too. Like he's priced pretty much where he should be for his average production in this case, maybe a little bit underpriced, but he has a 27% usage rate without Drew on the floor. So he's giving you that really elevated ceiling on the off chance he actually figures out how to shoot.
Sweet Lou at Isle Equity with the super chat. DraftKings partnered with, did they partner with Polygon? for the DK NFT platform.
It's the first
That's
I've
nice.
seen of it, but I wasn't looking for it.
What's that?
I said that's the first I've seen of it, but that doesn't mean anything.
Good luck, everyone, tonight. I had a little plug for the NFT / DraftKings partnership with Polygon. All right. Favorite options from this game.
Giannis, Middleton on the other side, Brogdon, Lamb for value. I mean, in a DFS sense, I think those are the guys I probably get to the most. Obviously, I really like Sabonis, Duarte, and Turner are fine, but Lamb for value, especially if he's not going to be that popular, and then Brogdon, also prefer him if he's not going to be that popular.
Detroit, Atlanta. The Detroit Pistons, 11.5-point dogs, 212.5 total. One of the lowest totals on the slate. Oddly, we have 3 of them that are at 212 or lower tonight. So take that for what it's worth. We might get through a couple of them pretty quick. The only thing here, I think, really worth discussing, given that this is not going to be a team with an abundance of ownership, Adam, as it shouldn't be, is Jeremy Grant's questionable to play. So we've seen him just shoulder a ton of usage on a team that is, still in rebuilding mode, tanking mode, really. If Jeremy Grant ends up sitting, can anybody soak up the opportunity, the usage, and the minutes enough to be viable at a cheap price point?
I wouldn't say I'm expecting anyone to soak it up efficiently, but you're going to get plenty of shots to go around. You're going to see Saddiq Bey shoot a lot. You probably see Kelly Olynyk play a bigger role. I think Olynyk would be the guy that I really feel the best about. Like Saddiq Bey would look good, but he's also 6,600. We saw Kelly Olynyk last year when given a bigger role, he produced at a ridiculous rate with Houston. And I think you would probably see something similar here. It's tough to say with a ton of confidence because Detroit's rotation's an absolute dumpster fire and most of their players suck. But assuming Olynyk steps into a bigger role at 5,200, I'd be really interested in him if Grant sits. Yeah,
I would too. And at this rate, Kelly was it the postseason? No, it was the last month of last season with Houston, right? Where Kelly Olynyk was only playing 29 minutes per game, but he was still just crushing. So we know that he can get it done, especially on a team that has no quality players. I mean, you throw him on Miami and you should be expecting some of those poor performances, but how many minutes would you give him if Grant was out?
Yeah. So that's the tough part because Detroit's rotation is just
Bradley Beal's in, by the way.
Good. Detroit's rotation is just a mess. You could just see Trey Lyles pick up a bunch more minutes. I think it's likely that you would see Olynyk get a nice chunk of them. He played. I have Olynyk in for about 22 minutes right now. I'd feel comfortable at least going to 26 to 28 if Grant sits. I'd feel even better if he gets to start.
Okay. Anybody else for Detroit?
Not really. It's pretty much Grant if he plays, and I think Olynyk, Bey, Lyles all get bumps if Grant doesn't. You can roll the dice on a cheap Frank Jackson, but the guard rotation for Detroit's just been really messy. They've been in games that weren't really blowouts, but they still just ran a deep rotation in terms of minutes. It's tough to trust anybody's getting more than 32. Frank Jackson's played 28 and then 20. Killian Hayes hasn't played more than 24 yet. So there's not a whole lot here for me outside of Grant and then the guys that I think would step up if Grant's out.
All right. So DeAndre Hunter has been ruled out for Atlanta with an illness. So that's taking a starter out of the rotation, a 30-minute per game guy. And Danilo Gallinari is questionable for this one. Assuming Gallo continues to sit and knowing that DeAndre Hunter is out, does this create any more appeal for anybody that might be slotted into the starting lineup and getting those extra minutes?
I think it should open up more minutes for Cam Reddish. He played 28 minutes last game. He benefited from John Collins' foul trouble, but we know Reddish can defend multiple positions. So he's just someone that I would think, especially if Gallo is out, is likely to step up into a bigger role. You also probably get more minutes for Kevin Huerter. He played 22 minutes last game. And then probably the rest trickle down to DeLon Wright. So I think Reddish probably the biggest beneficiary at 4,700. Huerter at 4,800. Gets a bump for me as well. At those salaries, I don't think either one jumps out as a must play or anything. But if you assume Reddish is going to play something 28 to 30 minutes, he's at least in play in tournaments. Whereas if Hunter had been in, I wouldn't really have any case for Cam Reddish.
Okay. Yeah. And from a usage standpoint, Hunter's at 18%. You still have Trae Young, Reddish. But the thing is, the usage on this team is actually pretty spread out below those two players, right? And Reddish obviously getting that bench run with pretty heavy responsibility. But like Capella's not a high usage guy. John Collins hasn't been. And granted, they've only played a couple of games. Bogdanovich has been a very low usage player. So maybe it does benefit one of these guys enough. Would you rather? I don't see Reddish moving into the starting lineup, though, given his involvement off the bench. It would probably be Herter, right?
Yeah, Herter's my guess. Oh, probably Herter. Like, it's not like there's anybody on Detroit that Reddish needs to defend either.
Yeah. All right. Reddish, $4,700 on DraftKings. Not bad. What else are you doing with the Hawks today?
Bunch of tournament options. Not much that stands out to me in cash. Trae Young clearly gives you a high ceiling. There's some other options in his price range that I think look a little bit better, but that also probably drives his ownership down. It's certainly a matchup against Detroit where you could see Trae Young just destroy whoever is supposed to be guarding him. So I like Young, but Collins and Capella, I think, give you really high ceilings for these mid 6K price tags. We had gotten the report before last game that Clint Capella's minute restriction would be increased. He played 27.3 minutes. You could potentially see him get, up to 30 minutes here. I think he's averaged 1.2 DraftKings points per minute since last season, but I mean, that's an average. There's still games where he goes out there and he can give you 1.4 fantasy points per minute. Whenever Capella's in this price range and not getting much ownership, I'm really, really interested just because there's so much volatility in his game. And then to a lesser extent with Collins as well, doesn't give you quite the same sort of upside that Capella does, but still a good player who is kind of priced for his median production, but has some volatility to his game. So in tournaments, I like those. Well, I guess those three: Young, Collins, and Capella. Neither one or none of them really stand out as priorities, though.
So no real priorities from this game, then.
No, just kind of tournament shots.
All right. And if Jeremy Grant is out, would that just make some tournament shots or guys that you'll have decent exposure to, but nobody that you're going super heavy on?
If Olynyk starts for Grant, actually, I'll say if Olynyk, I assume either Olynyk or Lyles would start. Either of them would end up looking like, I think, very, very good options. Olynyk, because you're really confident or pretty confident in his production, he should be able to take on a big productive role. Lyles, because he's really, really cheap.
All right. Yahoo Fantasy, baby. I don't know if you guys are playing there. I actually saw a comment just a minute ago saying that signed up and got the best deal of his life. And I did not pay him to shill that in chat. I promise you, I wouldn't do that. I don't need to because it's a good deal. Used to be 2 months, but if you missed out on that and you still haven't signed up at Yahoo, I don't know what you're waiting for, but you still haven't signed up at Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports using the link in the description. Again, can't just sign up and be like, yo, fellas, I signed up. Hit me with that free monthly pass. It doesn't work that way. Jordan will throw it in chat right now or use the link in the description. You'll get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, everything on the site. Ownership, boom bust tool, top stack, player projections, the lineup builder, Fantasy Cruncher add-on. Outside of Fantasy Cruncher, everything built by Alex Baker himself. Awesemo, #1 ranked DFS player out there, won a lot of money with these tools. It's a $90 value. All you got to do is, it's beneficial to you regardless because you go sign up at Yahoo. That's all you have to do using the link, deposit $10 or more, only has to be $10, and enter a paid contest. When you do that, they'll send your information over to us and we'll hit you up and get you set up with that free 1 month Awesemo Plus Platinum account. Everything on the site, not just basketball, literally every sport. If there's contests out there, we got premium content for it. So do that. And I think Yahoo gives you back $10 in credits as well. So basically it's free. It's free $90 you're getting, and you get to play over at Yahoo where they've got some monster contests. So check it out. Use the link in the description or the link that's posted in the chat and get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum by depositing, signing up the first time at Yahoo. Only got to put $10 in there, but you got to use the link. All right. Let's talk about Washington and Brooklyn. This game's got a hefty total, 228.5. Washington will get Bradley Beal back today, Adam. So with Brooklyn's defense, pretty putrid to start the season, and they just have not looked good by any stretch, somehow pulling a win out over the Sixers because the Sixers just are the Sixers. But the Wizards playing at the fastest pace in the league this season through the first week. Is this a spot that we should be attacking on both sides?
They're like the 19th fastest pace.
Yeah, my fault. I was on 2020. I was on. I forgot to filter back from last year. Minnesota Timberwolves playing at the fastest pace this year.
Yeah. To that point, though, I was going to say kind of something similar. Washington hasn't played at a fast pace so far this year. They've only played a couple of games. I think it's reasonable to not think, or to think that they don't play as fast as they did last year when they were playing with Westbrook and under Scott Brooks. Different coach, no Westbrook, obviously. But I still, even if they're a middle of the pack team, I think their defense probably isn't very good this year as the sample gets bigger. I think they're probably still going to be a pretty appealing matchup. And this is a game, like you said, Brooklyn struggling defensively as well. I think this is a game where you could just see a lot of fantasy production. So which side are we starting on? Washington?
The road team, yeah, Washington.
Yeah, so Beal coming back actually makes this team pretty difficult to prioritize anything from. Beal certainly in tournaments is fine, gives you a high ceiling. He's in that Trae Young bucket where as long as he's not popular, he's a fine play in tournaments. There are guys priced around him at guard that are going to look a little bit better though. But you had Dinwiddie's salary come up. He's gone from 4,900 to 5,600 to 7K. He obviously you would expect him to lose production without Beal. He played 35 minutes last game. Now that was in overtime, which so it was 30 in regulation. The reason I even mention it is that he did physically play 35 minutes, which is good because he's coming back from the partially torn ACL. He hadn't played more than like 26 minutes in the regular season or preseason prior to that. So maybe, you start getting 32, 33-minute games from him. But at 7K, it's not anything I'm too concerned about here anyway. Kyle Kuzma's price tag came up too. I think you see good rebounding numbers from Kuzma on this team, but it's tough for me to pay 6,700. I think probably the most appealing spot of Washington outside of Beal is the Montrezl Harrell, Daniel Gafford split at center. Neither one of them projects all that well from a median standpoint because you're just getting them splitting minutes, but it's a duo where both of them are extremely productive when they're on the floor. So when you get the games where they both play 24 minutes, neither one's likely to be that good at their current price tags, but there's going to be games where Harrell plays 28 minutes or Gafford plays 28 minutes. And in those games, they're likely to put up very, very good scores. So given that neither one is likely to have too much ownership, you can certainly mix them in tournaments, but nothing from Washington that I'm prioritizing.
Bobby Portis out. Al Horford out. Drew Holiday out. Romeo Langford out. Jaylen Brown in. Anything you want to hit on here?
Not really. Horford being out, I'd said I expected that even though I wasn't projecting for it. I'm assuming you're going to get Grant Williams starting. He's not a productive fantasy option. There's going to be minutes available for Naismith. There's going to be minutes available off the bench for Schroeder, but nothing really stands out. Schroeder, at 5,600, you can take some shots in tournaments. Brown being in makes it so Tatum is a good play, but not a great play. The other one, what was the other?
I don't know. Holiday's out. Portis is out.
Yeah, Portis. So I feel a little bit better about Jordan Nwora at 4,200. I thought there was a chance that he'd end up losing some minutes if Portis came back. Doesn't change a whole lot. Just I think solidifies the playing time for Nwora, Connaughton, those guys. There's just less options on Milwaukee.
Okay. On the Brooklyn side of the basketball, you got Kevin Durant, James Harden, the two obvious answers here, but you also have a slate where you have Giannis, you have Nikola Jokic, and just a bevy of talented players. Durant's been a lot better than Harden thus far, but now that price point's starting to separate a little bit where he's getting priced up quite a bit higher than Harden, but Harden's price isn't really coming down either.
Yeah, I think Harden's a really interesting spot here because he's cheap for his talent level and his role. Obviously, it's James Harden. He's 9,500 on DraftKings. He has a 28.5% usage rate this year. He has a 38% assist percentage. He's only averaging 1.26 DraftKings points per minute. On one hand, his effective field goal percentage this year is about 7 points lower than it was last year. That tells me that you can expect Harden's production to increase going forward. The concern is that he's gone from averaging about 7.2 free throw attempts per game to 3. His drives per game is similar to last year. He's averaging about 1.5 fewer drives per game so far. So I do think you see the free throw attempt number come up somewhat, but you also have to keep in mind that the NBA changed their rules in part to keep James Harden off the free throw line. So I think it's reasonable to expect his free throw attempts per game to come down from last year. Long way of saying, I guess, that I think Harden produces at a higher rate than he has to this point. But I also think it's reasonable to think that he doesn't produce at as high a rate as he did last year. So he's still a very good play at 9,500. I think he's underpriced. I do think that it's a spot, and all spots really are, but a spot you're going to want to pay attention to ownership. Right now we have him on DraftKings projected for 24% ownership. I think that's reasonable, but I also think that there's pivots in that price range. We mentioned Trae Young, we mentioned Bradley Beal. We haven't gotten to Damian Lillard, but he's also half the ownership. So just pay attention to the ownership, pay attention to the rest of your lineup, and you can certainly move to some of those guys. I think they have similar ceilings to Harden. As far as Durant goes, he's produced at an extremely high rate so far, 1.7 DraftKings points per minute. He's produced about 1.5 fantasy points per minute without Irving on the floor going back to last year. He has a 35% usage rate, 39% assist percentage. I like Durant more than Harden in terms of projection. I also realize he's more expensive, so he's a little bit more difficult to get to, but you're also getting half the ownership. So I really like Durant here.
Top options from this game?
Kevin Durant followed by Harden. Also, just as far as peripheral plays on Brooklyn, there's a couple ways this rotation could go with LaMarcus Aldridge out. We saw Bruce Brown come back into the rotation, play like 27 minutes yesterday. You could see him get minutes again. Yesterday, Griffin was out, Aldridge was in. Today, Griffin's in, Aldridge is out. So you could see Brown get some more minutes, but you also could see Nick Claxton pick up more minutes. Aldridge has been his direct backup. He's only 3,600 on DraftKings. If you see Claxton get 22 to 24 minutes, he looks like a pretty decent value here. So I think Claxton and Brown are both risky, but they also offer some reward at their salaries.
All right. Yo, we got some free content on the site today as well. We have, what do we got? Where are we at? Oh, that's right. We have the deep dive from Adam, which is free every day of the week. It's the best most comprehensive play-by-play, or really top plays. No, you know what? It's not even a top plays article. It lays out the entire landscape of the slate and shows you what you need to be doing each day. And it's totally free every day of the week. NFL Showdown top plays are free today. NBA player projections are free. NHL player rankings, all of that free. Awesemo.com. Don't need an account or anything like that. If you want an account and you want to sign up, Curry, it's the last day for this one. Curry, all caps, like the basketball player, half off everything on the site. All the tools I mentioned before, 50% off. Awesemo plus platinum, every tool, every sport, you name it. Awesemo.com/promos. Use that. Just click. You'll see Curry. Just click it. It's simple. You don't even have to type it in at checkout. Take you right there. Orlando is a huge dog, 13-point dogs today, Adam. And they're facing Miami, 211 total. Really, the only significant injury news on either side is Kyle Lowry being questionable. But let's cruise through this Orlando team with Cole Anthony coming off a monster performance in his second season with the Magic.
Yeah, signature win for them last night over the Knicks. Probably the best win they'll have all season. This team is just
the only
garbage. Yeah, yeah, maybe the only. This team is terrible. They're getting Gary Harris back. That makes this rotation a little bit more difficult to trust. I had said, I don't remember if I was on the show with you or Josh, or I don't know who I was with, but not that there are a bunch of really good players, but this team is just so freaking deep in terms of guys that should be in NBA, or that are going to be in NBA rotations. Like, I'm assuming Brazdeikis leaves the rotation entirely, but you're just adding Harris in, who's going to play 20-ish minutes, I would assume. So it's tough to trust any of these guys, especially in a very, very difficult matchup at Miami on a back-to-back. Pretty likely that they just no-show this game. The one reason that I think they're still worth at least mentioning in the context of tournaments is we've seen Orlando get blown out already this year, and they keep giving their young guys minutes, as you would expect. So, I think to some extent, Jalen Suggs, Mo Bamba, Franz Wagner, these guys are all somewhat blowout proof in terms of minutes. It's still a tough matchup. It's still a spot they're not likely to produce that well. Wagner at 4,400, averaging about 34.5 minutes per game. His rates suck. He's only averaging 0.7 fantasy points per minute, but at 4,400, I think still deserves a mention just given how many minutes he's playing. Outside of that, Anthony, Bamba, Suggs, they're all okay tournament flyers, but this team has a 99-point implied total. It's pretty much the worst spot they could be in. I'm not getting carried away with Orlando.
Yeah, I was going to mention the Magic have the lowest implied total on the slate and the only one below 100.
Yeah, and they suck. The matchup sucks. It's in Miami too, so you also have the risk of they just show up and don't play like the Bucks did. Spent too much time at 11, but yeah, it's a pretty brutal spot.
What about Miami? Obviously, the Kyle Lowry pending news is pretty significant, so feel free to break those down both ways.
Yeah, it's significant, but it's also kind of not. I mean, it matters, but if he's out, it's like, I think, a small bump to Bam and Butler and Hero, but nothing that would make them drastically different. As is, I think that they're all solid options. Butler and Bam are likely to have good games. There is plenty of risk that they don't play the entire game, but as we've talked about before, the team on the winning side of a blowout, I'm typically less concerned about, because if they blow out the Magic, they probably are producing at an above average rate, so they would still look good. So Butler and Bam look good. If Lowry's in, I don't really see any reason to get to him. It would make me less interested in Hero as well. If Lowry is out, I think Hero gets the biggest bump, just because he would most likely get more playing time.
All right. Well, when you look at guys like Bam and Butler, the ownership coming in on them right now, at least since our last update, is, real low double digits on guys like Butler and Adebayo. Nobody else really getting anything. Of course, the Kyle Lowry news could change that, but like you said, it might not be hugely impactful. Is there anyone else for the Heat that you want to get to?
No, I don't think so.
All right, fair enough. Let's keep it going then. We got Chicago and Toronto. And hey, hit that thumb. What are we at? Are we at 3? Oh, boom, 300 on the nose. We got almost 2,000 watching, 300, not a bad ratio, but if we could get up to 500 before lock starts, which you should stick around for, that would be fantastic. Only takes a second. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. All right, let's talk about Chicago and Toronto. The Bulls look like a pretty fun team. I don't know if they'll have any real success in the postseason. I tend to lean no, but they've looked good early on, Adam. How is that going to translate to fantasy success for us, given their ownership and, of course, their price tags tonight?
So I think they're going to be a tough team in DFS from like a cash perspective and the perspective of trusting these guys. But I think they're going to be a really fun team in tournaments, because it's not like they're just going to have each player is going to have an average performance every night. You're more likely to get, Vooch has one big game, and then Levine has a big game, and then DeRozan has a big game. And it's just, when people look at medium projections, it's going to make it so like when they're all healthy, none of them are popular normally, assuming, there's not completely mispriced guys like Vooch the other day. But it's still going to be spots you can target them in tournaments. 8,400 for Levine. This is someone that you can go play 35, 36 minutes here, can score 50 fantasy points pretty easily. Same goes for Vooch. We just saw the big DeRozan game last time out. So I like mixing these guys in tournaments. There's not one guy that really stands out to me. I think it's kind of the same thought process for all of them. They're priced about where they should be for their medium production. They're not really overpriced. They're not underpriced, but just knowing how good a good Vooch game is and how good a good Levine game is, they're still appealing in tournaments when we have them projected, Vooch at about 4%, or sorry, Vooch at 1%, DeRozan at 4%, Levine at 3%. So I think, in tournaments, they all make sense. Caruso's salary jumped from 3,400 to 4,200. He's coming off of a monster game his last time out. He's been getting good minutes here, but with the increasing price tag, it's still tough to, be really excited about him.
So let me ask you this. If Vooch sits with this illness, right, in the event that he sits, would you be willing to look towards, there's really not much there that you'd get excited about? I guess it would be like I don't know who's even backing up Alize Johnson.
Yeah, give me all the Alize Johnson at small forward if Vooch sits.
You have to, right?
Do you remember what he did last year?
Yeah, I remember what he did. What was it, like 20 and 15 or something off the bench when everybody else went to other play? Nobody played him the first time, and then everyone
wasn't in the rotation.
What?
Yeah, he wasn't in the rotation, and then he just like showed up and went nuts.
I swear he had like 20 and 18.
Yeah, he had some just insane game. But yeah, like he's been getting minutes behind Vooch. He didn't play in the second half last game. He subbed in for him in the first half. In the second half, did they just go small? DeRozan, Williams, Green, Caruso, and Dosunmu. But yeah, I mean, we would get a better idea of what they're going to do based on the starting lineup. But if you got Alize Johnson starting, then he'd be extremely valuable because he's small forward eligible.
Danilo Gallinari is out, so there's that.
Kyle Lowry is warming up with the intent to play.
Oh, you gotta love that. Okay.
I bet his minutes will be monitored if he does play.
Yeah, they will be, which will mean nothing at all. Here it was 23 and 15 with two steals and 3 assists in 32 minutes for Alize Johnson last year.
Yeah, that game was insane. But yeah, I would love to get to him here. It wouldn't be the first time I've played him this season, as bad as that feels to admit.
No, and I will say, if you remember, he was like 80% the next game and was just terrible. Didn't play any minutes.
Yeah, he was on Brooklyn last year, right?
Yeah, he's on the Nets.
I think he was on the Pacers before that, but he finished last year up. He played a total of 211 minutes. He averaged 1.29 DraftKings points per minute.
Yeah, I'll get to some of that today if Vooch is out. No problem. I'm assuming he's minimum salary, right?
Yeah, he's a 3K small forward, power forward on DraftKings.
Yeah, playing center.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take it for sure.
And
what
I mean,
about Toronto on the other side?
Yeah, and it's a small Toronto team too.
Yeah, for sure. What are you doing with the Toronto Raptors?
Another tournament team for me mostly. Scotty Barnes price tag elevated to 5,900, so he's still a good play. Like he's still fine, but he's not the great value that he had been. I think there are a couple of things worth mentioning with Toronto that do make them pretty appealing in tournaments, assuming they're not going to be very popular. OG Anunoby taking on a bigger usage role this year. He is projected for 14% ownership, but he has a 25.4% usage rate so far this season. That's actually the highest on the team, ahead of Van Vliet. Barnes is second at 24.5%, and then Van Vliet at 22.8%. That's excluding Chris Boucher off the bench. But the point being, I think there's still a tendency for people to look at Anunoby in the same light that he's been in the past, where he's out there for defensive reasons. He's not doing a whole lot offensively. He's being asked to be more aggressive offensively. So I think he does give you a higher ceiling. And then the other spot where I'm interested is Precious Achiuwa at 4,500. I think he's still being a little bit underprojected in terms of his playing time, because nobody really knew what to make of it coming into the season. And then in the first game, he had foul trouble. And so when you go back and look, it's just like, oh yeah, Achiuwa played 21 minutes. We can't trust his minutes. But then he came out and he played like 30 plus. He played 33.4 in the last game. Achiuwa's about a fantasy point per minute guy, actually over a fantasy point per minute so far this year. He's 4,500. Yeah, there is still some minute volatility because of the presence of Birch and Boucher, but I think barring foul trouble, you're talking more often than not about Achiuwa playing 28 to 30 minutes at a pretty cheap price tag.
He played 30 minutes to close that game out. Now, granted, they went up by 16, so he was out there for a stretch of them taking off. But yeah, he played 13 minutes to close that last game out.
Yeah, and even in the first half, he played like 15 minutes. So I'm not expecting him to play 33, 34 every night, but I think just based on what we've seen so far this year, that in those games where he's not in foul trouble, you are getting around 30 minutes. Granted, there's going to be plenty of games where he is in foul trouble, so he's still volatile, but at a $4,500 price tag, I kind of just think he's still being undersold a little bit across the industry.
Absolutely. Hey, if you guys aren't using the Awesemo avatar yet, just go to awesemo.com/avatar, download that baby. And when you win or finish top 3 in any field of 5,000 or more, tweet us at Awesemo HOF, at Awesemo Hall of Fame. Include Adam and myself too, because we like to see these wins. You'll get on top of the money you won. It could be in the quarter, arcade, nickel, doesn't matter. As long as you're top 3 in the field of 5,000 or more, free month of Awesemo Plus. And we like to show off because, well, for you guys, as we do that, throw them on the screen, Jordan. I don't have a ton of time, but I'd be doing everybody dirty if we didn't throw them up here. TJ with the 4-hour lock shout out, live before lock shout out. Huge win for him. I love seeing this. TJ's always hanging out in chat. $22,000 yesterday, crushing. Congrats to you, TJ. And then Redskins 1001. I remember that team, Adam.
Yeah, I remember this guy that I should have passed if Fournette could score a touchdown.
Yeah, there's Ship My Money in fourth, 12,500. Not bad for yourself. But Redskins took it down 100K up top, baby. That's huge. 2 Awesemo avatars.
I was slightly less pissed off when I saw it was an Awesemo avatar.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that that's pretty, yeah, for sure. Matt Gajeski, too, helping Christopher take down 5 of 5, 10X on Prize Picks. I love this format on Prize Picks. It's awesome. I can't see the actual graphic there, but he won. There it is. He won $1,000 on 100, so that makes me pretty happy. I don't know if I'm going out of order here, Jordan, but if I am, just rock with me here. Rob is his name. Used the boom bust tool last night. Boom, $200. Congrats to you. And last one, I can't go through all of these. Colin with the $100,000 win in MMA. Pete the Heat, Jason Floyd, huge win, rocking the Awesemo avatar. So through and through. And then Daddy Dak 95, 2,600, also rocking the avatar. We've had some big wins here lately. Get yourself up on this board. Get your free month. Go to awesemo.com/promos and tweet us at Awesemo HOF when you have that big win. Even if you just like the win and you don't qualify, you want to get up here, we got you. All right, Adam, let's go. New Orleans and Minnesota. Break this one down for me with the Pelicans being favored here, or sorry, dogs by 5.5 points, 226 total. They have not looked good to start the year.
No, they haven't, but you do have some very good plays here. You mentioned it earlier by accident, but Minnesota playing at the fastest pace in the league, not the Wizards. So you have some really, really good values here from New Orleans, I think, or at least good plays in general. I guess calling them values is a little bit misleading. But Devontae Graham at 5,400, he played about 35 minutes last game. You're likely to get low to mid 30s from him here. He's just underpriced in this spot. Brandon Ingram gets a bump without Zion. You've seen that going back to last year. His usage rate goes up. His assist percentage goes up. I don't expect him to produce at quite the same level he did last year, since he does have a higher usage center in Jonas Valanciunas compared to Steven Adams. But I still think you get more production from Ingram than without Zion than with him. I think that makes sense. So he looks like a pretty strong option, but Joe Val is the one that really stands out to me, especially on FanDuel at 6,600, but 7,900 on DraftKings too. I think there's a tendency to look at Joe Val and just view him the same way we did when he was with Toronto and when he was with Memphis, where he's this guy that you're hoping plays 30 minutes. New Orleans is using him completely differently this year. He played 33 minutes in a blowout where he lost 4.5 minutes. He played 30 minutes in a blowout where he lost 4.5 minutes. And then he played 36 minutes in a competitive game. They are running him for just true starter minutes here. He's averaging 1.18 DraftKings points per minute. In the past, you've seen him get 1.25 to 1.3 fantasy points per minute. Massive, massive ceiling for Jonas Valanciunas. Again, completely mispriced. Arguably the best play on the slate on FanDuel. We haven't projected for the most ownership. On DraftKings, lower ownership, more expensive price tag, still a massive ceiling. You can certainly look to Alexander Walker in tournaments as well, but I think he falls behind Graham, Ingram, and Jovel.
I've been lobbying for them to, release Joval since he was in Toronto. So everything you're saying there makes me pretty happy. You and I have both been saying this for years now. If you give him starters minutes, like 33, 35 minutes a night, eventually he'll probably be like a high 8, low 9K player.
Yeah, agreed. The production's always been there. It's just a matter of the minutes, and then can he maintain that production? And so far, 1.18 DraftKings points per minute. Maybe it's a little bit of a drop off, but that's still excellent per minute production for his price range.
What are your thoughts on Minnesota?
I think Karl-Anthony Towns looks like a solid option as always, more so on DraftKings than FanDuel. He's only about $100 less than Jokic on FanDuel, but he's cheap on DraftKings. You should get, 35, 36 minutes from him. He looks really good. I think Russell in tournaments looks solid. His price tag's pretty cheap. I'm a little concerned about the playing time he's been getting recently, or this season, I guess I should say. Only played about 29 minutes last game. You saw Pat Beverly close the first half over him, but he's still a very high upside player. There's still going to be games where he plays 33, 34 minutes. So he'll look good. And then Anthony Edwards taking on a huge role this year, playing really, really well, playing big minutes, played 37 minutes last game. I think getting to Edwards is a strong play as well. Those are, the three that I think really stand out.
All right. Anybody else?
No, I mean, Jaden McDaniels, you can mix in for value.
Top
easily.
options from this game then.
Yeah. Towns, Joval, Graham.
All right. Cleveland, Denver. We're still waiting on Darius Garland here. Questionable. He did go through shoot around though. So I'm assuming we're both just projecting him in here. With that being the case, they're 9.5 point dogs. Denver 220.5 total. I like Denver a lot in this game from a betting perspective. I think they clean up against Cleveland. Is there anyone from the Cavs though that stands out as a viable fantasy option?
Not whatsoever, assuming Garland plays.
All right. That makes my life a lot easier. And
they're expensive.
Because what's up?
They're expensive. The matchup sucks. There's plenty of good plays on the slate. I don't need it.
All right. Makes sense. I don't want to waste time if we can get to other good spots here in the few minutes that we have left. Josh and Greg coming up next. And thank you for getting us over 400 likes. We will get to 500 in the next 2 minutes before I turn this over to Engleman and his clan. All right, Denver. What are we doing with the Denver Nuggets? Nikola Jokic starting off.
Yeah, I mean, Jokic looks great. He's producing at a high level this year, around 1.7 DraftKings points per minute. He produced at a really high level all of last year, but especially when he played without Jamal Murray, as is the case right now. So I think Jokic still looks great. Obviously there's some blowout risk here, but if Denver blows out Cleveland to the point where Jokic loses fourth quarter minutes, he probably was really productive when he was out there, so I don't care that much. Michael Porter Jr. at 6K, probably the cheapest price tag we're going to get from him like ever. He hasn't been very good this year. Only about 0.72 DraftKings points per minute, but going back to last year, over 1,000 minutes with Jokic on and Murray off, he's averaged a fantasy point per minute. You should get, low to mid 30s from him if this game's competitive. I think he's a solid option. Barton, Gordon, Morris, secondary plays for me. Nothing really stands out. I will note on Barton, he went back to not running with the second unit last game. His production just like his expected production increases a lot if he plays with the second unit. So it kind of sucks that he went back to not doing that, but it makes me like him less knowing that happened.
Okay. Top options from Denver.
Jokic, Porter.
Would you say is Jokic your favorite high price player?
I think he's second to Giannis.
Second to Giannis. Where would you rank Harden and Durant?
Third, fourth.
Okay.
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Let's close it out. Portland and the Clippers. We've got Portland +3, 231 total. No Norman Powell. He was crushing the other game before he went down after only 12 minutes. What type of impact does that have for you? And is it enough for us to say get to any of these secondary guards that would generally be coming off the bench for Portland?
So I think based on what we saw last game, you see Nasir Little slide into the starting lineup. He's really cheap. He did play a lot of minutes in the second half, played about 16 minutes in the second half of that game. So you potentially could be getting, 30 minutes from Little. You also probably get more run from Larry Nance Jr. This is a situation too, where with it being a game where the Blazers have the opportunity to plan for Powell to be out, maybe you see Nance take on a bigger role. I would rather roll the dice on a $3,900 Nance than $3,800 Little, even assuming Little starts, because I think that Nance just gives you that higher ceiling. He's the better per minute fantasy guy. And if he does, like if you get a situation where Nance and Little both play 26 minutes, which I think is reasonable, even if not the most likely outcome, Nance is the one that's most likely to, win you a tournament. So I think they benefit from Powell being out. Lillard, McCollum, obviously, two top options. I love Lillard in tournaments. He's always a really tough guy to get to because he's typically overpriced for his medium production, and then he's still rostered just because he's Damian Lillard. But now his salary dropped $1,000 from last game. He's still projected for half of the ownership of James Harden at the same price point. We know how high Lillard's ceiling is, so I like him quite a bit in tournaments. I would go to Harden in cash games. And then McCollum, you're seeing him play almost all of the minutes that Lillard doesn't play. That's really important for him. He's reasonably priced, so I like McCollum quite a bit. Nurkic always fine in tournaments, but I think there are center options that look a little bit better.
Joe Flacco to the Jets with Zach Wilson out. I guess they didn't want Mike White in there. What's that?
For some reason, I was thinking he was still on the Jets.
He was on the Eagles.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, why would you not want Mike White? He had the same amount of fantasy points as Patrick Mahomes yesterday. Is that good for nothing?
Yeah. Vooch didn't go through shoot around, by the way.
Oh, okay. So this could be, I mean, that's a pivotal spot right there if he ends up sitting. I mean, that's huge.
Yep. Be ready. Either plan for him to be out or more realistically, be ready to late swap your lineups.
All right. And hey, we might have to go hour 15 on these 9-game slates, but Josh was gracious enough to say, hey, take your time, because I know he's champing at the bit to get on, but good friend Josh Engleman coming up next. We're 25 likes away from 500, by the way. Talk to me about the Clippers or anything else you have for Portland, and then we'll wrap this one up, send it over to the Live Before Lock crew.
Someone just said Schroeder's starting. I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, Schroeder's confirmed starting. That is correct.
Okay, so, I mean, that's good for his minutes. Obviously, the production is going to be, hit or miss because he's playing with Tatum and Brown, but that is good for his playing time. As far as the Clippers go, Paul George is going to look good. He sees a bump in usage. His production increases without Kawhi Leonard. I still think it's tough. He's kind of just like too close in price to Durant and Giannis and Jokic, but I still think in tournaments, especially if he's not going to get a whole lot of ownership, he makes sense just because the ceiling is really, really high. If this game is competitive, you kind of can assume that Paul George is doing a lot of the work for the Clippers. Beyond that, you still have a cheap price tag on some of the bench guys from the Clippers. Luke Kennard's cheap coming off of a game where he played 22 minutes. Batum is cheap. He played about 23 minutes. There's not a whole lot that stands out to me there. But they are cheap guys that you can use in tournaments if you need the savings. George, the real priority for me here, though.
So you like George even at that price point? He's been phenomenal, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like him as much as I like Durant, Giannis, Jokic. That's the problem. But when he's projected for 6% ownership and has the level of production without Kawhi on the floor that he's had since last year, I still think he makes a ton of sense in tournaments.
Awesome. I like it too. JH, I'll leave you with this. No, it is champing at the bit. I wouldn't just say that. People just say chomping at the bit because they don't know that it's champing it. That's okay. Doesn't matter. Well, I'm just glad you guys are hanging out for one more hour with Josh, with Greg, Thanks for getting us over 500 likes. Means a lot to me. Hit that subscribe as well. And thanks for the super chats. Thanks for hanging out. Good luck tonight. We'll catch you back here next time on the Deeper Dive presented by Yahoo Fantasy Sports. Remember, live before lock, and then immediately after that, you got Showdown for football, live before lock, New Orleans Saints, Seattle Seahawks, or what's left of them. So hang out with us all the way through the night. Peace.
Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Monday, October 25th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We are brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy Sports, and we will be talking about them quite a bit moving forward. This is going to be a fun one. We've got a lot of news over like the past 15, 20 minutes, so I feel like we have a whole lot to talk about. Before we do anything, you guys have been doing a great job of hitting that like button. We're north of 500 likes right now, 2,300-ish people, and I know that number is going to climb, but if you haven't done it yet, please hit that thumbs up. It helps us out a ton, and you guys know how I feel about getting those likes on here. I can't compete with Laffy in this scenario because it's just a different mechanism than it is for NFL. Of course, the deeper dive is going to have a ton. I can't get another 500, although I'm certainly going to try. Let's just dive into this right now. Greg, how are you?
I'm good, but I'm nervous. We briefly mentioned before we came on, Ben the Better is launching a DFS Slack channel, and we really have to be on our P's and Q's now because there's risk of us just getting run over in the DFS space now. We're getting these people to like. We're getting these people to subscribe to the YouTube channel because we could be out of gigs a month from now.
Hopefully he continues to play head to head so that Adam can continue to pay his rent. I think that would be a good time for him. Wonder if Adam's going to pick up a sub to that site.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a good advantage for him because then he could really know who Ben's playing in those head-to-heads. And I'm fairly certain he's undefeated against him, which is going to have to turn eventually. Because even if the lineups are being played, like a 75-25 split, Ben's going to win at some point. But I like Ben a little bit, so I try not to dump on him too much. But he is probably my favorite content creator in the entire DFS and betting space.
Besides me?
No, including you.
That's fair. We'll take what I can get here. So I have a run sheet put together of topics that we should talk about, but I have one that I think we need to talk about right out of the gate. Do you think that Tony Bradley starts at center for the Chicago Bulls if Vooch is out, or do you think they go to Alize Johnson? Because I am leaning to Tony Bradley.
Well, I'm just hoping that Vucevic plays, but I kind of think it's going to be Alize Johnson. I mean, either way, though, I think it's going to be somewhat of a time split. I don't think we're going to see one of them go out and play 30 minutes and the other plays 18 or something like that. I think both of them play somewhere around 20-ish minutes. So I'm actually not sweating too much who ends up starting. What I am looking to do is manipulate the ownership, though. If we get the news that Vucevic ends up being out, where let's say one of them ends up being massively popular and one of them's lower owned, then I'm going to kind of try to play with that in GPPs. But I don't think there's going to be a massive difference in how I look at them if Vucevic is out.
Yeah, I'm just leaning on it where it just feels like a situation where you bring in Tony Bradley to start in that same sort of rotation. You keep Alize Johnson in the same sort of role that he had before, but maybe give him, an extra minute or two in each one of his rotations, and then the potential to close. I don't know how necessary that's going to be. They have played some Pat Williams at the 5 as well. I think it's possible we can see that, just given the fact that Toronto's not exactly running out the monstrous center unit anywhere. But yeah, when I started looking at it, and once I saw the news that Vooch did not participate in shoot around, my first thought was, this feels like the spot. This feels like why you go out and get Tony Bradley. I mean, I was shocked that he wasn't the starting center or wasn't the backup center, I guess I should mean, right out of the gate. I think now is the time where you just bring him in and he gets like 18 to 22 minutes to start. Alize Johnson gets the basically additional run, and maybe we see a couple more minutes of Patrick Williams. That's where I'm leaning right now. I don't know if that's going to actually happen, but that is my feel.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing too is I don't feel like we have to sweat it too much right now, just from the standpoint of we're going to get the news at some point and then we kind of react to it. And I don't really think we need to guess too much as to it's going to be. But once again, I think it's going to be somewhat of a time split.
Do you like Vooch today? Because he's not a guy that I was really getting to either way.
Let's see. In my lineups, do I have exposure to Vucevic? Not really. Not on. I have him in a couple of lineups on FanDuel, not on DraftKings. So no, there's a handful of centers I like today, and Vucevic was not one of them. Maybe if we get to lock and the news comes out like 7:00 or 7:15 that he's playing, and he's only projected for 1% ownership at that time, maybe then I'll force myself to get to 5% of them, just because there's that still that upside in tournaments. But just as a standalone play, if somebody's playing single entry, 20 max, 3 max, I wouldn't be considering him.
Final Vooch question before we get out of here. Before we actually start looking at the rest of the shit that we're supposed to look at. Do you think we get this news before lock? I guess 2 questions then. Do you think we get this news before lock?
No.
Okay. Follow-up question to this. Or did I just lose that question in my head? I think I did. What do you think the chances are that Vooch plays, given he did not go through shoot around? Because to me, this is a lower than 50-50 questionable type thing. I think he's less likely to play than play.
I think that's a reasonable assumption to say maybe like 75-25 in favor of him sitting because he didn't go through shoot arounds. That, and also is we don't know what the illness is, right? Does he have a case of the shits? Was it, it's an AJ Brown situation where he ate at Chipotle the other day? So that's something. Also, it's early in the season. We've seen teams are really apt to rest players this early in the season if they're not feeling 100%. We've already seen it with Jaylen Brown. We've seen it with Bradley Beal. Teams are not messing around with injuries this early in the season. So maybe just that in itself and him missing shoot around also makes me think that they're maybe a little more apt to sit him.
All right. Well, I wanted to touch on that right out of the gate. We did just get the starting lineup for the Wizards: Dinwiddie, Beal, Caldwell Pope, Kyle Kuzma, and Daniel Gafford. Nothing there is really freaking me out. That seems pretty spot on as far as I'm concerned. So let's dive into it. Let's start talking about the guards. Some of the higher owned guards we have today: Jeremy Lamb, James Harden, Chris Duarte. We've got James Harden, LaMelo Ball, Malcolm Brogdon, Fred VanVleet, all rank relatively high in our boom bust tool on the boom side. Anthony Edwards, Monty Morris, Dame, a little bit higher than you would expect in the bust side. We're seeing LaMelo look like a decent leverage play. We're seeing Bradley Beal look like a decent leverage play. Pat Bev, who I don't necessarily know if I want to get to. Who are some of the guards that stand out most to you? Who are the guys that you're getting to most?
So I want to start by talking about James Harden, and I want to ask your opinion on this because I was going through some of my results this year, and I noticed something. There's a little bit of coincidence here, but there's also a potential leak in how I've set up the Nets so far. I have lost money on every single slate the Nets have been on this year. I've profited on every single slate the Nets have not been on this year. The main reason is because of how I'm projecting James Harden and Kevin Durant. And if you look at the numbers last year when Kyrie Irving was off the court, James Harden was a much better fantasy producer than Kevin Durant. And that's even if you take into account the minutes that both of them played together. Because if you just look at the overall numbers, there's a bunch of games that Kyrie and Durant missed that Harden played where that would inflate his numbers a little bit. But even the minutes where the two, James Harden and Kevin Durant, were on the court, Harden was the better fantasy producer. And I've set up my approach to the Nets this way to this point. It's only 3 games. But as I'm starting to read some of the comments in the media, I'm really starting to get not like totally concerned, but it's at least a little worry of how James Harden's production this year is going to be impacted by the new free throw rules. So I'm going to ask you, how much do you think this actually is impacting Harden right now?
Not all that much. It's not a major concern to me. It is weird to me that he isn't getting more free throws, but it's not like all of his free throws were just a total sham always. I do think he's getting older. I do think that he might not just have that same half step that he needed to put himself in situations to draw those fouls. So do I think that he might draw less fouls moving forward? Yes. Do I think that it's as extreme as it is right now? No, not even close. So I haven't touched anything with regards to Harden on the back end. I have him basically as like a 1.3.5 to 1.4 fantasy point per minute guy. And that's how I'm going to move forward.
Yeah, I still have him projected above Durant, and I don't feel great about it given how the first 2 games of the season went. And it's
that I don't have.
Yeah, I still do, because a lot of it's still based on, just like I said, that he was the better fantasy producer last year when Kyrie Irving was off the court. And it's a thing also where I think I probably need to reassess that a little bit, maybe after this game. But at least for now, I do have more exposure to James Harden than I do to Kevin Durant. It's been the case for me each of the first 2 Nets games of the season, and it's gone very poorly. But at least for today, that is still the approach I'm going with. So I am a little bit overweight to the field on James Harden. He's my favorite pay up option on the slate.
I also think that it's interesting to obviously, like, 3 free throw attempts per game over 3 games. Like that's just going to come up. But I mean, I think the real number that we need to look at is he's not the same guy that he was in Houston. Like, he averaged 7 free throw attempts per game last year. I think that's a more realistic total. He's just different now because he plays with Kevin Durant and potentially Kyrie Irving instead of, well, nobody in Houston last year, or Russ or Chris Paul. Like, it's just a different level when you have Kevin Durant, arguably the greatest scorer ever in basketball. It's just easier for that number to just naturally come down. He's never getting back up to the 10 a game that he used to be at, just from a role perspective. And he's looking to distribute more too. 10.8 assists per game last year, up from the 7.5 number he had the year before. Like, he's just shooting less too.
Yeah, he is shooting less, but it's still, and once again, it's only 3 games. But if we had to go and we had to pick out a couple of players to say who's going to be most impacted by the free throw rule, I think the first 2 guys everybody would point to would be James Harden and Trae Young. And to this point, both of them got to the free throw line less. And the Nets are complaining in the media that they think the rules are specifically targeted against James Harden. And James Harden has said himself that it's impacting his confidence. So let that be as it is. I think it's an interesting talking point. But at least as of now, I still really do like James Harden a lot. And I might readjust after today or going forward, but not quite yet.
So one guy that I have my eye on quite a bit, and I want to make sure that his ownership is still where it is. He's a guy that I've been getting to a lot as of late. So let me grab our most recent update from ownership, which was 23 minutes ago. Do I already have that? We're at what?
Better question 40... for you. Better question for you than me.
Yeah, 47% on Joval. Okay, so I already have it. What is your opinion on 4.4% owned Spencer Dinwiddie at 6,500? Because he might be my favorite guy relative to salary today, or relative to ownership, rather.
Let's see. Where do I have him? So Spencer Dinwiddie. It would help if I spelled his name correctly here.
It definitely would help to do that.
I have him in my player pool, but he's not somebody I'm massively overweight to or anything like that.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure what we should be expecting from his usage now that Bradley Beal is back in the mix. So if you look at the games that he's played so far this year, with and without Bradley Beal in the lineup. It's only been, once again, 2 games for them. The game that Bradley Beal played, he had a 24.7% usage rate. The game that Beal sat, he had a 31.9% usage rate. So I'm not exactly sure what it is we're going to be getting from Dinwiddie, but that price point. And are you saying for FanDuel purposes, it's 6,500, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't projected for fantasy points in the low 30s. Do you have him well above that?
34.9.
Okay. Yeah, I'm 3 points below that. So that's something that's going to make a difference.
I had him as a 1.05 guy coming into this season. I got him at 1.09 for the game, 32 minutes, 34.9. I think that's pretty reasonable. He's been 1.27 so far this season. Like, I'm certainly not going to any per minute rate like that, but I'm just really surprised that he's getting underlooked. I don't know if it's just because he was out for injury so long, or maybe I'm just wildly incorrect, but to me, this feels like a really nice spot for him. It's a pace up spot against Brooklyn. Nobody's playing the revenge narrative card for reasons that I don't totally understand. Clearly, that's a checkbox that I put into my model. But right now, I am very, very interested in Spencer Dinwiddie on FanDuel. And I'm to a lesser extent, Kyle Kuzma. But we'll talk forwards in a bit.
I'm still not totally sure what to make of that Wizards usage situation, because once again, it's been 2 games. One game was with Brad Beal. One game was out Brad Beal. So I have more exposure to Kuzma than I do, and Harrell actually, than I do to Dinwiddie. But I think he's a fair play.
Okay. Anybody else standing out from your exposures at guard right now? For me, I'm just getting a lot more big men, which we're definitely going to get to. I agree with Cole Anthony ownership. I don't think that that's crazy at all. There's not much else there for the Magic. And I don't think Gary Harris coming back is going to slow that down. I have no issues with the Nickeil Alexander-Walker ownership or the Lonzo Ball ownership. I think Devontae Graham's probably a little underrepresented on FanDuel. Do you see anybody that you have as like wildly guys that you're way over the field on, or the opposite? Are you fading anybody that's pulling any ownership?
I am way over on LaMelo today. I really, really like the spot for LaMelo. And I think a lot of people are under projecting LaMelo today because his minutes were so low yesterday. But that was a wonky situation. So the game was not especially competitive. They beat the Nets fairly handily. And also in the fourth quarter, Ish Smith was playing really well. So LaMelo Ball did not step on the court in the fourth quarter, even though he played well through the first 3 quarters. And a lot of people were saying, hey, James Briggs, is he an idiot? What is he doing? Apparently, LaMelo Ball went to him and said, hey, Ish Smith is playing really well. Leave me on the bench. Let him close the game today. And the game was just not competitive. The Hornets ended up winning by 16 points. There was no need to put LaMelo back in. I'm not actually concerned about LaMelo's minutes. I also think there was a point where it was like, hey, this game isn't that close. We're playing again tomorrow. We might as well save him for another day. So I think LaMelo plays over 30 minutes today, even though we haven't seen that in the first few games of the season. And he's getting projected to me, I think, a lot of places as if he's going to be a guy who's playing limited minutes. So I'm really high on LaMelo for this year and this slate in particular. I think he deserves ownership probably over 20% in this spot today. And I think that he could potentially be a starter in the All-Star game this year. He looked really good on opening night. So LaMelo Ball is somebody who I think is going to be priced well more expensive than where he's at right now going forward.
I have 16% right now. Got him at 1.27 FanDuel points per minute. 8,200 on FanDuel is a pretty healthy price tag. The lack of a second position doesn't help either. Just the fact that he's point guard only. Not that it's a huge problem. I'm obviously still getting to him. I'm a little bit more limited. I'm actually we're eventually going to get to it, but the guy that I'm getting to the most from the Charlotte Hornets would be Mason Plumlee.
Okay, actually, I'm overweight to Plumlee as well. But LaMelo, my number one point guard that I'm most overweight to on FanDuel and DraftKings today.
Who's your number one guard that you're most underweight to?
Let's see. All right, so current ownership. Who's really popular that I am not quite as high on? Monty Morris. So
okay, I like that. I'm very under as well, so we're on the same page.
And it's not even that I have him projected incredibly poorly. I just don't understand why he's a guy that's 20% owned on FanDuel when I have him projected for right around 20 fantasy points. You know, if you get 20 fantasy points out of somebody who's 4,200, that's not a massive issue, but that's not somebody who I look at either and go like, oh my God, I need to get to Monty Morris, especially not when he's that popular. I think there's a lot of good value plays today. I don't think that salary is all that restrictive, especially when we have somebody like James Harden's only 10,000 today as a pay-up option on FanDuel. He's 9,500 on DK. So I don't really understand why there's this much ownership projected for Monty Morris.
I agree. I have 3.5% right now. I got him projected for 23.2 points. That is not ownership.
Yeah.
So yeah, we share the same sort of thought process on Monty Morris. That's just not a guy that I'm trying to get to all that much. Similar story for Chris Duarte. I just don't want to have 21% of him, even though I like the spot, but 3 games in 4 nights. It's a tough, just overall package for Indiana right now. I'm actually light on Miles Turner for the first time this season. So I assume he has the game that he had on Friday or Saturday and not the second one where he absolutely sucked and played like 16 minutes. Neither here nor there. I had somebody else that I wanted to mention. What are your thoughts? Because he does have guard eligibility on FanDuel. What are you doing with Gordon Hayward? Because he's someone that I've been like aggressively under on all season.
Let's see. I'm getting to Gordon Hayward, and his current ownership is projected at. So I'm right around the field on Gordon Hayward. One thing that really makes a difference for me here is that we don't have Terry Rozier in the mix.
Yeah.
Terry Rozier played, then he sat, and then he was out again. Gordon Hayward, somebody else who really sucked yesterday, played 33 minutes. He turned the ball over 5 times. His usage rate was low. But still, overall, I'm bullish on Gordon Hayward. And I think that, especially because there is no Terry Rozier in the mix, it's not somebody I have a massive lean on. He's 23.6% projected ownership. I have him at 25% right now. But I don't have an issue with where he's at.
Okay. I just refreshed my Hornets table. So far this season, Kai Jones in 2 minutes is averaging -1 fantasy points per minute. I couldn't figure out why the column needed to be resized. I was like, numbers don't work like that in this. And yeah, it turns out the negative sign's throwing it off. So good for you, Kai Jones.
Yeah, the thrills of 2-game sample sizes.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any other guards that you want to touch on right now?
Let's see. Let me go through FanDuel, DraftKings. So Jeremy Lamb is somebody who also has small forward eligibility on DraftKings. And I've always liked Jeremy Lamb from a fantasy perspective because he's somebody who, when he's on the court, he's capable of scoring fantasy points pretty quickly. Also, he hasn't played all that many minutes so far this year. He was dealing with a little bit of a wrist injury. He's been listed as questionable, but it hasn't prevented him from getting out on the court. Minutes so far this year, 24, 24, 18. But like you said, 3rd game in 4 nights for the Pacers. He's somebody who has not played massive minutes. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a slight uptick in minutes. And Jeremy Lamb always been somebody who's capable of being a point per minute fantasy producer. So if he is potentially going to get to 24, 26 minutes, I like him as a lower owned value option.
Sounds good to me. Schedule for the rest of the night. NFL Live Before Lock for tonight's game between the Saints and Seahawks. That will be kicking off at 7:15 Eastern time. So about 15 minutes after Greg and I pack this one in. Oh, this is an NBA Live Before Lock, not an MLB Live Before Lock. So we end at 7 instead of 7:05. Dope. It makes me so happy. NFL Showdown top plays free today. NBA projections also free today. So if you're watching this show, and I assume you're pretty interested in NBA DFS, lucky you, our projections are free. Go check them out on the website. NHL rankings also free. Now let's move it over to the forwards. We've got Michael Porter Jr. as chalk. I love him. We got Jeremy Lamb as chalk, also forward eligible. Giannis, Chris Middleton. We've got Giannis as a pretty high boom ranking. Michael Porter, Franz Wagner, Jordan Nwora, if you're looking to save some money. Kevin Durant, oddly high on the bust meter. I mentioned Anthony Edwards before. I don't know what to do with Kevin Huerter right now, given the no DeAndre Hunter, no Danilo Gallinari news. Jaylen Brown could be a decent leverage play, but limited to 30 minutes now, so I don't know if he's as interesting. I'm a Franz Wagner guy, but I don't know if Gary Harris takes a bite out of him. Who are some of your favorite forwards for today?
So first, there was somebody that you just mentioned there that I wanted to. Crap. I had a point right there and it slipped my mind when he mentioned one of the names, but all right.
Hold on 1 second. I missed a super chat before from Cyber Real Estate that said, does Evan Mobley have an opportunity to cash on Jock Market? Need to finish top 28 to cash? I would say, yeah.
I really like Evan Mobley. This rookie class is ridiculous on the whole. I can't remember, and there's 2 reasons this has happened. Number one, it's a really good rookie class with a lot of really talented rookies, but also DraftKings has priced them so egregiously. I just can't remember there being a year where there was this many rookies that were DFS relevant right out of the gate. But yeah, I like Evan Mobley a lot.
Yeah, I have no reason to think that he can't cash. I mean, I got him projected for 33-ish fantasy points today. There's no reason that he couldn't have an outlier day and get into the 40s. And I assume that would have no problem getting into the top 20 something scorers for today. So yeah, no issue there. Apologies for missing that one. It slipped through the cracks for me. And we just got another one from Fantasy Guru, but he retracted his message. So I got nothing for you, Fantasy Guru. Greg, back to forwards.
Yeah. So from
who asked?
LaMelo. He asked Brogdon or LaMelo was the super chat. I prefer LaMelo today.
I assume that my answer is LaMelo. I don't know which site it's on. Obviously, that's generally helpful information. Actually, I have Malcolm Brogdon 0.3 of a point ahead of LaMelo Ball today. I have them basically equal, and I have the exact same amount of both. So both, even more helpful now.
Yeah, for me, I have LaMelo projected quite a bit higher. So that is my answer.
I like it. Either I'm happy to have both guys. I've been getting a lot of Brogdon one way or the other too. Who knows? Maybe Malcolm Brogdon will play 44 minutes today in regulation.
Yeah, maybe LaMelo Ball will play over 30 minutes in regulation.
I gave him 32 today.
I gave him 33.
I like it. Forwards. Let's try this again.
All right. So
we'll get there eventually.
Here we go forward. So here's a player that I think should be picking up more ownership. And let me just refresh to see if this has changed.
Let me know if we got it.
33 seconds ago. So right on the dot here. All right. So Cam Reddish currently projected for 6% ownership on DraftKings, 2% on FanDuel. He was basically unowned earlier. The Hawks are dealing with a bunch of injuries, and I think that Cam Reddish is a really fantasy friendly game overall. He's the ability to do a little bit of everything. You consider DeAndre Hunter, he's out today for the Hawks. Danilo Gallinari's out for the Hawks. I think Cam Reddish could end up playing somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 minutes today. And given his low ownership, he's somebody that I really like, more so on DraftKings than FanDuel. But either way, I think Reddish is going overlooked.
I ended up giving him 30 minutes. I do think that he's pretty interesting at 4,700. You mentioned him being a guy that can do a little bit of everything. He's also a guy that can do a little bit of nothing too when he's out there. I don't know what he's actually going to be in the NBA moving forward, but on a day like today with no Gallo and no Hunter, if you're not getting at least some shares of him, you're probably making a mistake.
Yeah, that was so. I really liked. He was one of my favorite tournament options on the slate before we got this ownership update, because I think he was projected as like 2% ownership on DK and 1% on FanDuel, but it's not like him being 6 and 2% is problematic at all. So still somebody I'm overweight too.
Myron Kidd with the super chat. Thoughts on Anthony Edwards tonight? Last I looked, he was not a guy that I was getting much of, if anything. I will refresh just to see. Yeah, I'm right with the field right now. 12%. We've got him at 12.2.
I am underweight to the field on Anthony Edwards. I'm really high on him overall for the season.
Vooch is playing. What a dick.
There we go. All right. So we don't even have to give a shit about the about that Bulls situation. Did you have your lineup?
Oh, Jeremy Grant ruled out too.
And Derek Favors. Oh, that's tomorrow. Never mind. Did you have your lineup set as if Vucevic was going to be out?
Once we got the news that he was not in shoot around. I yanked him. Kyle Lowry available to play.
No surprises there.
At least I don't care too much about the fix for this. Like I just type 34 back into Vooch and give the rest of those minutes to Alize Johnson, and like no harm, no foul at this point. I don't care all that much. So it's not a difficult fix, but I was fixing to get just a metric butt ton of Alize Johnson and Tony Bradley at no ownership.
Well, the Detroit news is going to be pretty significant, though.
Oh yeah, let's talk through that, because I think that they are obviously a team that can go 75 different directions right now. Kelly Olynyk on the surface feels like the guy that benefits the most here.
That was a really
no Josh Hart, by the way.
Yeah, that was expected as well. I think he was questionable, except the reports earlier in the day was that it seemed that it was unlikely he was going to play. I agree with you on Kelly Olynyk. That was a really weird signing for them for a couple of reasons. Number one, he does not fit their timeline as a rebuilding team. But then number two, also, they paid him a decent chunk of money, just haven't played him that much so far this year. So the playing time for Kelly Olynyk so far this year, 2 games, he's played 22 minutes and 19 minutes. I just don't understand why you're investing money in somebody like Kelly Olynyk as the Detroit Pistons and not going to give him minutes. But now it kind of feels like he has to get minutes. with Jeremy Grant out, because as loaded as this team is in the backcourt, they don't have that many forwards to go to. They have Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, Kelly Olynyk. I guess Trey Lyles is going to play some minutes in the front court. But Bey, Stewart, and Olynyk all seem like they're firmly in play for me now.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where, like, who do you think the newest, like, do you think someone new comes into the rotation? Because I assume they go back, like, and continue to maintain a 10-man rotation. That's basically what they've had for their first 2 games. Is it Luke Garza? How tall is Luke Garza? He's like 6'7", 6'8", right?
Garza played a lot of it. Garza played a lot of.
He's 6'10". Like, holy shit!
He played center like entirely in college and was one of the better college players in the country. They drafted him, I think, kind of towards the end of the second round, but he seemed like he was NBA ready coming out of college. Not that I think that makes him DFS viable or anything like that, but somebody who could play 10 to 12 minutes, I wouldn't be shocked.
Do you think it's him, or do you think they just start bumping people up the positional spectrum and go to like a Saban Lee?
I'm going to say that Luke Garza steps in rotation, plays, I'll say 8 minutes.
I think that seems reasonable because Trey Lyles can be the nominal 4 in that situation. I'm going to give Lyles 22. I'm going to give Kelly Olynyk like 28 minutes. I think he plays similar time to Isaiah Stewart. I've got like a decent chunk of time left with 10 guys. So I don't really know who's going to be who's going to get the biggest benefit here. Like, they're splitting the point guard minutes. That's going to be Killian Hayes and Corey Joseph. There's not much else there. Frank Jackson around 24. I don't think that's going to impact him as much, but is this a spot now where we see a couple extra minutes to Hamidou Diallo? Does Josh Jackson get a little bit of extra run? To me, I think this is going to be a really flat rotation of a bunch of guys playing like 24 minutes. I think Detroit did a lot of that at the end of last season, and this feels like a spot where they're going to do it again.
What are the salary? I also didn't consider a lot of these guys early in the day. So at least on FanDuel, Isaiah Stewart at 5,100. I think, all right, so now that I'm actually looking at some of the salaries and trying to figure this out, Isaiah Stewart is the one that I'm going to get to the most on FanDuel, at least, just because he's the cheapest of those forwards. So Isaiah Stewart is $5,100 on FanDuel. Sadiq Bey is $6,400. That's already a pretty fair price, in my opinion. Kelly Olynyk at $5,400. He is somebody who's going to be in play for me, but I would rather play Isaiah Stewart at $5,100 than Kelly Olynyk at $5,400.
I'm looking at it right now. I just updated everything. Right now, I am getting to Isaiah Stewart for 5,100. I'm with you there. Kelly Olynyk for 5,400 is probably like a half step behind him. Both guys are going to be viable in that mid tier, but I need to get that crunch going, and I'm assuming you do as well.
Yep, I just clicked the run button, and I'm seeing. Let's see which Detroit guys I end up getting to. Isaiah Stewart, as the numbers are running, is in mid 20% of my lineups right now. That's the Piston I'm getting to the most.
Where's he hiding? He is my 2, 4, 6, 7th best per dollar play. We'll see where he ends up once ownership is a factor. But did we finish anything with regards to forwards? Because we got like 97 pieces of news there, and that changed up the game quite a bit. I'm getting to a lot of Giannis. That should be no surprise. I'm very happy to get there. Kyle Kuzma is the guy that I'm probably most interested in on FanDuel in terms of low-owned forward types, only 7% owned. I think he's just a different guy now that he's not behind LeBron James and Anthony Davis.
Now I remember why I prefer playing only on one site when I'm doing live before lock is playing on both FanDuel and DraftKings. It's like, all right, cool. I've got my FanDuel lineups updated. Now it's like, all right, now I have to do the DraftKings ones as well. So somebody in chat had said that Isaiah Stewart is 5,600. He is, yes, on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, he is cheaper than that. So that was what I was talking about. But over on DK now, because I'm updating over there as well. So on DraftKings, I'm going to like Kelly Olynyk the most of the Pistons players. And here's why it is Kelly Olynyk on DK as opposed to Isaiah Stewart on FanDuel. Not only is Kelly Olynyk cheaper than Isaiah Stewart on DraftKings, but he's power forward and center eligible. Isaiah Stewart is only center eligible. So I'm going to end up getting to more of Olynyk on DK.
We got a couple other super chats, so I want to hit on Arcathel's question. Precious Achua or Mo Bamba in a DK single entry? Price is no factor.
Let's see. Precious Achua or Mo Bamba. That is Bamba for me.
Where the hell? Oh, yeah, it's Bamba. To me, it's Bamba, not close.
Yeah. So I think Bamba, if he's going to get minutes, he's going to crush for fantasy this year because he's always been a really good points per minute fantasy producer. Just the minutes have never been there for him. Last year, he played 15.8 minutes per game. He averaged 19.59 DraftKings points. So far this year, he's playing 31 minutes per game. If that is going to hold, he could be somebody who scored somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 40 fantasy points per game. So yeah, that is Bamba in a landslide.
Mark Antonio May, I believe I'm saying that right. I don't know if MEI is May, but that's the way that I'm going to say it. Any thoughts on who takes Powell's minutes? Little ? Little is the guy that took over for him in the second half after Powell got hurt in the second quarter. So my assumption is that it's Little. I don't think that we have anything else to go by other than that.
No, I think Larry Nance could maybe end up playing a few extra minutes. Dennis Smith Jr. could end up stepping into the rotation, playing some extended minutes. But I'm not getting to Nasir Little in my lineups, even though I do have him projected to play more minutes.
I have 8% at 4K on FanDuel. That seemed reasonable to me for a guy that's going to get like a little bit of a bump, but he's to me, he's not any sort of priority, nothing that I'm looking for with any with any volume.
Yeah, I have 2 lineups with him.
Are you fading any relatively highly owned forwards?
Let's see, because now I don't even know which players I'm playing now that I just ran a new
standard issue Pacers lineup: Brogdon, Duarte, Holiday, Sabonis, Turner.
Let's talk about somebody who is chalk that I am playing, because I also saw it come up really briefly in the YouTube chat as people asking why he's going to be so popular today. And that is Michael Porter Jr., who I think at 6,000 is still good chalk on DraftKings. So far this year, his usage is down. I do not expect that to continue. It's only 2 games of the season. He had a 16.9% usage rate in opening game against the Suns. Second game against the Spurs, 17.7% usage rate. There's no Jamal Murray for Denver this year. We know that Denver is clearly building around Michael Porter Jr. They just paid him a max contract a week and a half ago. I'm not massively concerned. It's only 2 games. He's always been a really good points per fantasy producer when he's on the court, and his price has gotten to be so cheap on DraftKings at 6,000. He closed last year priced at 7,700, and that's always something I kind of look at as a good barometer for what we can expect from somebody going forward. So I don't have issue with Michael Porter Jr., and I'm totally overlooking the first couple games of the season.
Very clearly one of the best, if not the best plays on DraftKings as far as I'm concerned. He came out of my Sims as my number 1 guy. He just should be more than 6K. It's a price thing. That's really all there is to it. I mean, that's what this game is. DFS is a price solving problem, and his isn't correct for right now. And that's why you're seeing the ownership come in like it is. Soul Dope with the super chat. Sup, fellas? FanDuel question. James Harden and Spencer Dinwiddie, or Brogdon and LaMelo?
That is Harden and Dinwiddie for me.
It is Harden and Dinwiddie for me as well. Brad Kaufman, Bamba or Grant Williams or Porter last on DK? That's got to be Bamba for me, I think, but Porter's probably pretty close.
Bamba or Grant Williams or Porter. Let's see. Bamba's a decent amount more expensive than Porter, isn't he?
So Bamba on DK is 6,100. I got him at 34.6.
That's still Porter for me.
Yeah, it's Porter for me as well. I got him by 1.5.
Yeah,
I was just going off the top of my head. But yeah, that's still Porter. Have we gotten an ownership update anytime soon? 12 minutes ago, so that's still the same one. Anything else you want to touch on for forwards?
We didn't talk about Franz Wagner yet. I think he's very difficult to avoid at $4,100 on FanDuel, given the amount of minutes he's played so far this year. So 3 games for the Orlando Magic. And I know you mentioned some concerns really briefly about will the return of Gary Harris, how much of that is going to damper Wagner, but he's played 32 minutes, 34 minutes, 39 minutes. I still have to expect he plays well over 30 minutes. So even though he's chalk, I'm getting to him at $4,100 on FanDuel. You seem to express some concern about him earlier. So are you ultimately going to be underweight to him?
I am. I have about half the field right now. I'm nervous that Gary Harris is back and the positional overlap becomes a little bit of a problem. I'm nervous because Franz Wagner sucks as a fantasy performer, at least so far, 0.7 fantasy points per minute. I have him at 0.8. So it's not as if I thought that he was going to be something other than he is right now. I don't think that Orlando is particularly good. I don't like the fact that they're playing one of the better defensive teams in basketball, Kyle Lowry being back. This is the lowest total on the board. I think it's really easy to just get away from him today. He's not the guy that I want to be on when everyone else is already there. I'd rather just pick another like 4K 0.75 guy that isn't owned and cross my fingers. I will still have some because the minutes are a real thing and they might not go anywhere. Orlando doesn't have any real need to play Gary Harris other than to show he's healthy and potentially trade him down the line. So I do like him a bit, but I don't know if like the 20+% ownership that he's getting is something I want to maintain.
Let's see. So I have him in my most recent. I have him at 20% right now on FanDuel. So slightly underweight to the field. But once again, I find the price point on him to be unavoidable considering his minutes workload.
Yeah. Like I said, I got 15 right now. Well, I figure I'll be around there. He's not a guy that I want to get totally away from, but I'm nervous about all of the game script of this one because, look, I know it doesn't matter. And in the grand scheme of things, we should probably expect one of Cleveland, Orlando, or Detroit to probably win outright today, which is going to be like, oh, how the hell did that ever happen? But like, that's probably the odds. One of those three get it done. Orlando just feels like the least likely to do that to me, just because of the way that game's supposed to go. I don't know how they score enough. If they do, I think that this game ends up being like 81-79 or something really disgusting.
Yeah, that would be suboptimal from a fantasy standpoint.
It certainly would. Let's talk a little bit about the presenting sponsor of this show. That would be Yahoo Fantasy. And by the way, 700 likes, 3,100 people. Let's go. Let's take our shot at 1,000. Start hitting that thumbs up. Let's run those numbers up. 2,300 of you that are watching this bad boy haven't hit the thumbs up. You're willing to watch the content. You're not willing to help us out with just a simple button click. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Either way, we're partnered with Yahoo Fantasy now. We got a pretty good deal. It's exclusive, limited time offer. You can get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. You got to be new to Yahoo. Sign up for an account using the link in the description, or I think it can pop up in chat if you type like !Yahoo or something like that. Make a deposit and then play. That's all you got to do. Yahoo will send us your name after you play in your first paid contest, and we will reach out to you with a coupon code. If you need immediate access, please email support@awesemo.com. If you're doing this right now, I can't guarantee that you're going to get that response in 14 minutes, and I don't know how useful it's going to be for you in 14 minutes. But either way, we will try to get you set up faster if we can. You can also claim a free $10 below, which will be used to enter any Yahoo contest. Make sure you're using our DFS tools and projections. They're specifically designed for Yahoo, so you can have the best shot to win. Love having Yahoo as a sponsor. Feels good. Feels good. Let's talk centers.
I really like Clint Capella today. I'm gonna.
Whoa.
We've got 14 minutes to go until lock. Clint Capella is $6,800 on DK. On FanDuel, he is at $7,500. So he's a different play on DK compared to FanDuel. DK is my favorite center overall on the site. FanDuel, I'm overweight to him. His minutes have slowly started to ramp up. I mean, slowly. It's only been 2 games. He played 21 minutes the first game of the season, 27 minutes the second game of the season. Remember the 1 month mark or something last year? Clint Capella was priced over $10,000 on FanDuel, and people were going nuts when you and I were doing a bunch of shows together. Remember, people were going crazy. We're like, how would you not play Clint Capella at 11,000? He scores 1 million fantasy points every night. And now we're getting to a point where he's $6,800 on DK, $7,500 on FanDuel, and people don't want to play him. Given that he played 21 minutes and 27 minutes, I think he's back above 30 minutes, and as long as they don't just totally blow out the Pistons. So Clint Capella, just from a talent perspective, I think is the most underpriced center on the slate.
I have no problem with it because when he is getting those minutes, he's highly, highly productive. He's certainly a guy that I want to get to. What did you say his ownership was today? By the way, we got an ownership update 3 minutes ago.
All right, so let's see the most recent ownership update. At least before, he was sub 2%.
Okay.
All right, now he's 11% on DK. I'm still overweight to that number. On FanDuel, he is 5%. So he's gone from 2% on FanDuel and like 7% on DK to 5 and 11. Still numbers that I like being overweight to.
Okay. I'm going to see where I have him right now. I mean, the guy that I'm getting to most of anybody here as of right now is Joe Val. His price just isn't correct on FanDuel at 6,600 given this current matchup. Other guys that I'm getting to at the center spot, Sabonis. I'm underweight on Bam. I'm well over the field on Mo Bamba. I actually ended up with less Joval than I was expecting because we just ended up getting a lot more center ownership. What I do want to get your thoughts on is this. We've got Mo Bamba at 3.5% ownership. We've got Wendell Carter at 0.6% ownership on FanDuel. To me, I want to have a little bit more of at least one of those guys. If they get into foul trouble, I think it's pretty likely that you're locking in 30 minutes to the other guy. And the worst case scenario is that they just give a couple extra minutes to Robin Lopez. But I think they can both play 30 in the best case scenario. And the worst case scenario is that one of them isn't there and the other one just becomes that much better of a play. I'm really surprised to see neither guy pulling ownership.
Yeah, Bamba is my preferred play. We were talking about him briefly before when somebody mentioned him in a super chat. But I said last year, Mo Bamba scored well over a fantasy point per minute, and he's averaging over 30 minutes so far this year. To your point before about what happens, well over 30 minutes. Did I say 30 fantasy points per minute?
Sorry, I'm laughing because Thanasis is starting today.
Oh, okay. That's not something I was expecting. What is his salary?
He is 3,800 on FanDuel, 3,400 on DraftKings. He's a 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy. I think this is I don't get the sense he's going to play a closing rotation. And
I'm confused why he's starting at all. That's just very odd.
Sabonis, probably. To me, like Indiana has two legitimate big guys. I think it's harder to go to Connaughton in this spot. So you start Thanasis, have a second sort of long-ish guy. I don't think that I care all that much about it. I had him in for 18 minutes before. I don't think that his minute ceiling is now like 30. I think he's more like 20 to 22.
Yeah, let's see. Thanasis. And also,
Pat Connaughton played 37 minutes in San Antonio. He's the only Buck player averaging more than 30 right now.
I was going to look up Thanasis' previous starts, but then I realized that it's not going to be telling of anything because previous games he started was when everybody was out for the Bucks. You know, they always do those games where Milwaukee, they mass rest everybody. I don't know if Thanasis has ever actually started alongside Giannis.
No, he started in that one game where it wasn't Giannis starting.
Yeah, that's
I do remember. Yeah,
he started. Let's see. So we started 3 games last year, a couple of years before. Yeah, they were all games that Giannis didn't play. So that's not going to really give us any kind of information in terms of what we could expect.
Have you seen Kelly Olynyk's ownership on FanDuel? It's nothing. It's 0.5%. That feels incorrect to me, right?
I hope it's correct. I mean, I like Olynyk on FanDuel, and what is he on DraftKings? Kelly Olynyk is If he's 0.6% on DraftKings, that is the player I'm most overexposed to in the field. If he's actually 0.6% on DK at 5,200.
Yeah, I think he's going underrepresented at that number by like a lot. I have 20-something% Olynyk right now. And I couldn't be happier with that.
I'm going to up my exposure to Olynyk just because of that. Because I don't know what I was expecting in terms of ownership for Olynyk. I was just kind of like, hey, here's what I think the Pistons guys are going to look like. And Stewart was my favorite of the bunch. But now let's see, what's Stewart at? Stewart is.
By the way, this show went quite quickly. 8 minutes to go until lock. I haven't even downloaded my template yet, so probably need to do that.
Isaiah Stewart is 5% on DraftKings and less than 8% on DraftKings, less than 1% on FanDuel.
I have. Wait, you said less than 1% on FanDuel?
No, on DraftKings.
Sorry, gotcha. He's 8 on FanDuel.
Yeah, and 0.4 on DK.
Okay, that makes more sense to me. I was like, I should be getting more than 8% then if that's the case. All right, let's just sum it all up now because we're right up at the window. Favorite plays for today?
All right, so you do FanDuel and I'll do DraftKings for favorite plays?
Yeah, that works for me.
All right, so at point guard for me on DK, it is James Harden and LaMelo Ball. On shooting guard, At shooting guard, Cam Reddish. Small forward, Michael Porter Jr. Power forward, it is, well, I'm pretty spread out power forward, but Kelly Olynyk now, given that most recent news. And then center, it is Clint Capella and Mo Bamba.
Just got a super chat reminder from Jordan. I don't totally know the names. Lamb or Brown on FanDuel for value. What Brown? That can't be Jalen.
On FanDuel, Brown. Let's see.
Sterling? Now Dallas doesn't play. Who are we missing that's obvious here? Because there's no way that question is real if it's Jalen Brown. And
it has to be either Bruce Brown or Troy Brown, correct? I have
it's
zero
probably
exposure
Bruce
to both
Brown,
of them.
right?
I have 0% exposure to both of them.
I have 0 Bruce Brown. I have 0 Troy Brown.
Bruce Brown scored 24 fantasy points yesterday. It's definitely Bruce Brown. I don't have exposure to him today.
And I don't have any of the Browns. Bruce, Troy, Jalen, whatever Brown you mean. I got no Brown. I've had a lot of Brown. It's never mind. Favorite FanDuel plays. I did upload my lineup, so that's helpful. Favorite FanDuel plays for me right now. Guys I'm most over the field on: Kyle Kuzma, Spencer Dinwiddie, Kelly Olynyk, Mo Bamba, Wendell Carter Jr. Those are like my biggest flyers, but big stands on Giannis, Joe Val, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Cole Anthony. I'm happy to be there. Guys I'm fading: Scotty Barnes, Gordon Hayward, Jimmy Butler, Chris Duarte, finally Fred VanVleet. So I'm assuming his ass is going to go off, and that's going to really piss me off. I got to walk back Kyle Kuzma. I got way too much.
Yeah, I'm trying to get some more of Kelly Olynyk right now. That is my current mission.
All right, we got Kuzma down to 25. I'm going to bring Spencer Dinwiddie down a tiny, tiny bit. Don't want to go too crazy. How much time we got? 6:55, less than 5 minutes to go. Brogdon or CJ McCollum? I don't have a site for you.
Let's see. Brogdon or McCollum? I have a feeling this is going to be Brogdon regardless of site, but it's Brogdon. No matter which site it is, it's going to be Brogdon for me. I haven't projected quite a bit higher.
I agree. Man, I really thought that I was going to have just infinite Joe Val today, but we ended up getting just too many different dudes in the sixes that I'm getting to.
How much Olynyk did you end up with on FanDuel?
I have 25%.
All right, I have 22, and what is going to be hopefully my final. I like to say hopefully the final version of my lineup, so I know something stupid's going to happen 6 minutes from now.
How much did you say you had?
22.
Okay, so we're on the same page then.
Yeah.
Cue Kelly Olynyk playing 18 minutes.
Please no.
He has to get the run, right?
Yeah, I don't. So if it's not him, I don't even. Then I guess it just means he got into foul trouble, and maybe Luka Garza played a bunch of minutes, so they went small, or maybe just a blowout, and they're not able to give him the minutes. But I think even in a blowout situation, I think he's pretty likely to play the minutes given what else they have as options.
All right, I am uploading what I believe to be my final upload. At least I hope. I don't want to have to do this again, barring late swaps, like on purpose changes. I don't want to have to do no matter what's happening, I'm not getting anything new in the next 4 minutes unless I'm just hot swapping someone the hell out of there if I have to. I'm pretty happy with what I got here.
Yeah, let's go Pistons. How could this go poorly?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's not great. Most exposed teams for me: Pelicans, Magic, Bucks, Wizards, Pistons. Oh, that's not fun.
Yeah.
Tall says, should I fit Kelly Olynyk into my $40 single entry GPP, or am I okay? I don't know, man. I don't know any part of your lineup.
Yeah, I don't know. That's true. I don't know who else is there. I think that Kelly Olynyk is a very good play. Is he? Let's see. Is he in my? He actually is in my single entry lineup right now.
Okay. Yeah. The best that we can say is that we are significantly over the field on Kelly Olynyk, and that's the only way that I can move forward, because I have no idea what your lineup looks like. And even if I did know what your lineup looks like, my only answer is going to be well, yeah, you could always do this.
Yeah. Not necessarily. If somebody's wanting to play, Troy Brown Jr., then that I would probably say, don't go do that. But yeah, I think Kelly Olynyk, Now watch Kelly Olynyk end up. The slate starts Kelly Olynyk's like 30% owned, but at least given the information we have, I think Kelly Olynyk is a very, very strong play.
I'm really happy with where I'm at right now. I hope that I get two of these flyers, two of Kuzma, Dinwiddie, Olynyk, Mo Bamba. If two of those guys can give me a step up, it's like a 65th, 70th percentile outcome today, I think I'm going to be in good shape. I'm happy with my player pool. It's a little thinner than I wanted it to be. I probably have more guys than I really like. Something that I'm going to work on narrowing down in the near future, but I got a lot of good, 8% Nas Little, 8% Jaden McDaniels, 8% Cam Reddish, 8% Cody Martin. Those are the guys that I want to get to on a day like today because I just don't trust playing time in a couple different spots. 870 likes, by the way. We're so close. Hit that thumbs up.
Who is? I'm going to steal a question that you always ask as we finish out. Who is most likely to ruin your night? It is James Harden for me for the millionth time the Nets have played this year.
Most likely to ruin my night. $5,700 Miles Turner when I'm underweight on him feels likely considering how much I talk about Miles Turner and how much I personally like him. Ruin tends to mean guy I don't have that the field does. Scotty Barnes is projected for 34% ownership and I've got 2. So Scotty Barnes feels like the most likely scenario. He's the guy that I'm most underweight on. I don't understand the appeal for Scotty Barnes as much as we're getting ownership on him. Like, 0.95-ish fantasy point per minute guy at 5,100. I agree that the price is nice, but there are a lot of guys that look like Scotty Barnes today in the 5s and 6s.
Did you get too much Kevin Durant? Because the other thing also is I'm underweight to the field on Durant. If Harden doesn't play well, it probably means Durant scores like 60 fantasy points again.
14% Harden, 14% Durant.
All right.
Yeah, I am heavy on Giannis, 44. Basically neutral to Jokic, neutral to Durant, neutral to Paul George, Dame. A little bit over on Sabonis. One guy whose name I don't think that we really said, a guy that I thought was going to be pretty popular today on DraftKings. I haven't looked at the ownership, but wouldn't surprise me at all if Trae Young went crazy today.
I hope not.
I have like 8% now, but I thought he looked pretty good on the process show this morning. But that's it, man. We locked 900 likes. I'll take what I can get here, man. I think the people were happy to have us today.
Well, for sure. This is the first show we've done together. You're not doing as many live before locks. You get up at like 3 a.m. to start your process show. And realistically, if Josh does both of them, it's like a 15-hour workday for him. But yeah, good to get our first one on the belt this season.
Mondays are the only day right now. I think I'm picking up something else a little bit later on in the week, but we shall see. I've got soup to go eat, which I know is made for me, and I cannot wait to numb it down. Greg, anything you need to plug? Anything you want to do? We've got NFL Live Before Lock coming up in 15 minutes.
Nope. Stick around, you guys. Like this video if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
There it is, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Good luck tonight. Win some money, but finish second to me. Later, guys.